Chapter 1083. The silver-patterned silkworm's soul ring gave Huoyuhao spiritual detection. However, the silver-patterned silkworm's soul skill was spiritual sharing. It was a combination soul skill, but it didn't cover a large area. It was quite effective. However, these two soul skills had been influenced by the Skydream Iceworm. The Skydream Iceworm had given the silver-patterned silkworm a portion of its origin power, causing its soul ring to change. The two of them were originally from the silkworm race, so they could naturally do so. After watching the battle, the silver-striped silkworm's cultivation base improved rapidly. On the other hand, Huoyuhao was cultivating the Tang sect's ultimate skills, focusing on the mysterious heaven technique. This item wasn't very useful to Wang Feng, but it was still useful to Huoyuhao, as it could increase the quality of his soul power. Actually, over the past few years, the cultivation of soul power has been of great importance. Other than our Tang sect's mysterious heaven method, the other great sects also have their own unique soul power cultivation method. For example, Beibei's Blue Lightning Tyrant sect is from the same era as our Tang sect. After the concept of soul cores was proposed, the quality of one's soul power was related to one's soul core. Thus, a senior of the Blue Lightning Tyrant sect, who had always been seeking for change, created a cultivation method specifically for cultivation. It was called the Dragon Thunder technique. It's able to cultivate special lightning soul power, which will significantly enhance the combat prowess of disciples with Blue Lightning Tyrant dragons. Beibei cultivates this kind of cultivation technique. However, this kind of cultivation method had a flaw. It was very harmful to the body, and the further one progressed, the greater the damage. Simply put, their lifespans are relatively short. Along the way, Tangya introduced the continent to Huoyuhao. Wang Feng was intrigued by the story. It seemed that there were some changes to the cultivation of soul masters. After 10,000 years, other cultivation methods appeared, and not just Little Three's mysterious heaven method. Because the Blue Lightning Tyrant sect hadn't been destroyed back then, it was able to remain intact. Moreover, if they could seek change, this sect should also exist for a long time. That's right, according to our sect's historical records. Although our Blue Lightning Overlord sect's Dragon Thunder art is powerful, it consumes too much of our energy. The lifespans of past titled Douluo were extremely short. Beibei sighed. After that, my father didn't let me learn the Dragon Thunder technique. Instead, he sent me to the Tang sect to learn the mysterious heaven technique, and after that, at this point, Beibei looked at Tangya. Later on, he fell in love at first sight and truly joined the Tang sect. The mysterious heaven method is neutral and peaceful. Although it doesn't increase the Blue Lightning Tyrant dragon's martial soul by much, it's still very powerful. However, the quality of your soul power will still increase as you cultivate it, and your lifespan will also increase. Wang Feng commented, "Your father probably sent you to the Tang sect because he wanted you to find a way to improve your Dragon Thunder art through cultivating the mysterious heaven method." Beibei was stunned. How could he have thought of that? The mysterious heaven technique was a secret technique of the Tang sect. He had thought that his father had asked him to come to the Tang sect to secretly learn the mysterious heaven technique. Although he learned it later on, he didn't want to reveal the real mysterious heaven method. "Senior, I've learned a lot," Beibei said solemnly. However, he immediately smiled bitterly and said, "But cultivation techniques are formed after countless experiments by our predecessors. How can they be changed so easily?" Wang Feng smiled and said, "But those predecessors didn't know that he would create these cultivation methods. How do you know if you don't try?" Beibei nodded. "The person who created this Dragon Thunder technique from your Blue Lightning Tyrant sect can be considered a genius." Wang Feng sighed. Over the past 10,000 years, there had always been many powerful people. In Tang San's era, although they were the only ones, they would definitely produce many talents later on. If a soul master's cultivation relied purely on meditation, It would only be somewhat symbolic during the era of 10,000 years ago. However, those top-notch soul masters couldn't be content with the status quo. Once they encountered difficulties, they would seek to change. For example, the Dragon Thunder art was created after the Blue Lightning Tyrant sect proposed the concept of soul cores. They wanted to form a powerful lightning-type soul core. When there was a need, there would naturally be creation. The 7 great sects didn't disappear. After the Federation unified them, these sects could survive for a long time as long as they didn't mess around. In fact, the 7 great sects were all related to Wang Feng. Apart from the Clear Sky sect, Wang Feng didn't know much about them. Since they were related to Wang Feng, they naturally wouldn't be in big trouble. Besides the Blue Lightning Tyrant sect's Dragon Thunder art, the other great sects also have special soul power cultivation technique. For example, the 9 Treasures Glazed sect's Exquisite technique and the Clear Sky sect's 100 Refinements technique. They are all recorded in the history of these sects, and they have been created and changed over several generations. Tang Yin couldn't help but smile proudly. However, most of the cultivation techniques have more or less flaws. Our Mysterious Heaven technique is the most suitable for soul masters. It has no flaws at all. There are flaws because their cultivation techniques are created to target their sect's inherited martial soul, Wang Feng said. The Mysterious Heaven technique doesn't target any martial soul. This isn't a reason for you to be proud. Why haven't these sects declined? It's because they have inherited martial souls. Why has the Tang sect declined? Because the Tang sect's hidden weapons can never compare to the development of soul tools. However, martial souls are eternal. Wang Feng hit the nail on the head. This is the world of soul masters. Soul masters can cultivate without the Tang sect's hidden weapons or even soul tools. However, they can't leave their inherited martial souls. Does the Tang sect have inherited martial souls? Tang Yin was stunned. She felt as if she had been enlightened. All this time, she had thought that the Tang sect's decline was actually due to the influence of soul tools. However, the real reason for the Tang sect's decline was that they didn't have a true inherited martial soul. In this world, only martial souls were unique. No matter how powerful soul tools were in the future, they couldn't leave their martial souls. Why did the Bibidon establish family planning for those titled Doulu? Let them inherit their martial souls? With the foresight of the Bibidon back then, they thought of this. After all, this was a world of souls. The quality of a martial soul could almost determine a person's future to a large extent. And martial souls were related to talent. Therefore, Wang Feng thought that the Tang sect's ultimate skills were nothing. Humans could be created. However, martial souls couldn't be created. For example, cultivation techniques like the Dragon Thunder technique. If Wang Feng wanted to create one, it was actually very simple. He understood the higher-level life laws, time laws, and spatial laws. Those were the great Tao of the universe. He could understand some of those things. He could even create a life-soul contract that could change the rules of the world. What was a mere cultivation method to him? The reason he didn't need them was because he was special. Therefore, Wang Feng didn't care about cultivation technique. Furthermore, cultivation techniques weren't common now. Chapter 1084. Actually, if the Tang sect wants to expand its influence and return to its peak, we just have to announce the Mysterious Heaven technique. Wang Feng continued, because the Mysterious Heaven technique doesn't require a special martial soul. After that, we can use this influence to change the hidden weapons through soul tools. We can learn new techniques. If we continue to research and change it, the Tang sect can still return to its peak. How can we? Tang Yi shook her head. The sect's legacy was too important to her. How could they announce it? Using soul tools to change hidden weapons was easy to say, but it was difficult to do. Tang Yi was clear about this. Wang Feng smiled and didn't say anything. She was walking on a narrow path. However, the appearance of this technique made Wang Feng want to create a technique that was compatible with the life-soul contract. The more advanced a cultivation system was, the more it evolved with the development of society. However, this was still a concept. The group chatted as they walked. Tangya and Bei Bei admired this mysterious Elder Wang more and more. No matter what, Elder Wang's last sentence was enough to enlighten them. Wang Feng gave some pointers to Hui Yuhao, who was cultivating diligently. As a level 100 super big shot, Wang Feng had been cultivating for many years. He even understood some of the major laws. These laws represented the universe's supreme origin laws. Wang Feng didn't hold back when he spoke of his understanding of cultivation. In this world, no one was more impressive than him. Along the way, Wang Feng also discovered something interesting. The map that Tangya and the rest were using was a more traditional hand-drawn map. However, the soul tool that Wang Feng was using right now was given to him by Juzi. It was a soul tool from the Sun Moon Empire. This thing was similar to the electronic map apps in his previous life. The only difference was that it had various functions. As long as he injected his soul power, the map of the entire world would appear clearly. After zooming in, even though there was no positioning function, he would know exactly where he was. As there were no satellites, such a map was recorded purely through reconnaissance. It was more comprehensive and multifaceted than a hand-drawn map. The development of the Martial Spirit Federation and the Sun Moon Empire's soul tool technology could be seen with a simple map. At the same time, Wang Feng also learned about Shrek Academy. As the #1 academy in the Federation, or rather, the #1 academy on the continent, Shrek's name had not changed. It was also known as the Monster Academy by many people. How powerful was Shrek Academy? At least 6 of the 12 Douluo Heavenly Kings had studied in the academy before. The top experts of the 3 political districts all came from the Shrek Academy. As the cradle of the world of Soul Masters, the Shrek Academy's status was naturally extremely high. A few days later, the 4 of them arrived at Shrek Academy while chatting. Shrek City, to be precise. The city was specially allocated to the Shrek Academy by the Martial Spirit Federation. However, due to the unification of the Federation and the changes in the continent, Wang Feng didn't know which city Shrek City was in the past. It was built on a plain and extended in all directions. It was located at the intersection of the 3 major political districts. Looking at the city in front of him, Wang Feng felt a little emotional. From outside the city, he could see many buildings that were at least tens of meters tall. There were even buildings that were hundreds of meters tall. The height of a building, to a certain extent, could measure the development and changes of an era. Walking out of the city, Wang Feng suddenly had the illusion of returning to the 80s and 90s in the history books of his previous life. The Federation, which focused on the cultivation of soul masters, didn't pay much attention to soul tool technology, so soul tools didn't change much in the past 10,000 years. The only thing that changed was soul masters. Wang Feng could feel the condensed aura of many soul masters in the city. The only difference between these soul masters now and 10,000 years ago was that, because of the energy tide, soul masters' cultivation speed was faster. However, in order to be able to step into the next level more steadily, soul masters would stay at each level for a long time to stabilize. Otherwise, it would be difficult to condense a soul core in the future. It was a little similar to soul power compression. However, it was only passive compression, and couldn't be compared to the exaggerated compression of Wang Feng 10,000 years ago. Therefore, there would be an obvious change in overall strength. Of course, it couldn't be compared. Because the soul masters of 10,000 years ago couldn't be compared to the current soul masters at all. A rank 20 soul master of the current level could be compared to a rank 30 soul master of 10,000 years ago, and could even be completely defeated. Note that this was a common situation. It wasn't an exception. What a good city! Wang Feng sighed and then walked into the city with Tangya. The moment he walked in, Wang Feng felt countless gazes converging on him like spotlights. Oh no, too handsome, it's easy to attract attention. Wang Feng suddenly forgot about this matter. But at this moment it was too late. Fortunately, the quality of the people in Shrek City was still quite high. Other than their gazes on Wang Feng, they didn't really swarm over, as if they were on drugs. However, with Wang Feng's handsome appearance, many people couldn't take their eyes off him. There were really a few people who were ready to make a move. A young man, you're not bad looking. A woman in her 30s, who was dressed elegantly, had a charming appearance, and an outstanding figure, lifted the curtain of the carriage and chuckled a few times. Young man, you don't look old, and your soul power fluctuations aren't obvious. Obviously, your talent is average. But it's okay. If you don't want to work hard, come find me. Whatever you want, I'll satisfy you. After she finished speaking, this woman took out a nameplate and handed it to Wang Feng. Wang Feng was speechless. The other two were also stifling their laughter. Huoyu Hao was a little confused. Why did this woman say that if I don't want to work hard, I can go find her? This auntie should be in the field of psychological counseling or counseling. Wang Feng explained to Huoyu Hao seriously, when we don't want to work hard, she'll counsel us. She'll reignite our hope and motivation. Continue working hard. Oh! Huoyu Hao was enlightened. Tangya and Bei Bei were so embarrassed that their faces turned red. Of course, they knew what that meant, Senior Yu. Bei Bei laughed embarrassedly. Is there a problem? Wang Feng looked at the two of them. Am I wrong? You're right. Tangya and Bei Bei thought for a moment. But Senior, do you want to wear a mask? Otherwise, is it my fault that I'm handsome? Wang Feng looked at them in disbelief. It had been 10,000 years. Wang Feng felt that he was no longer the man who liked to wear a mask. Perhaps it was because this was a smurf. Tangya and Bei Bei suddenly felt as if they had been attacked. Chapter 1085. Don't worry. As long as I don't stay here forever, there won't be any disturbances. Wang Feng waved his hands and said, instead, I'll leave them with a beautiful memory. Who doesn't want to have a beautiful memory? Tangya and Bei Bei thought to themselves that it made sense. After all, seeing a handsome guy, especially someone like Senior Wang, would make them happy for the entire day. However, if they kept looking at him, they would be addicted to him, and that wouldn't be a good thing. Tangya and Bei Bei quickly arrived at Shrek Academy under the watchful eyes of countless people. Even with Bei Bei and Tangya's thick skin, they couldn't withstand the gazes on their way here, even if those gazes weren't directed at them. Huoyu Hao was also a little embarrassed. After all, even Tangya and Bei Bei couldn't stand being stared at by so many people, let alone an 11-year-old kid like him. Tang Yen and Bei Bei looked at Senior Wang, who had his hands behind his back and was looking at Shrek Academy's gate with a calm expression. They were immediately filled with admiration. There was nothing else to say. Senior Wang's face was not only handsome, but also thick. He walked all the way here as if nothing had happened. There were even many beautiful girls who took the initiative to ask to be introduced to him, but they were all calmly rejected by Senior Wang. Is this Shrek Academy? Wang Feng looked at the academy in front of him, as if he was looking at a university from his previous life. The gate was made from the bones of a soul beast, a powerful savage beast that worshipped fighting, the 100-war demon-slaying lion. This savage beast worshipped fighting. As long as it met other soul beasts, the only thing it would do was to fight them. The gate was made from the bones of this soul beast. The words on the signboard that emitted a powerful fighting aura were also engraved on it. They all showed the teaching philosophy of Shrek Academy. Worshipped fighting. Fighting strength was king. No wonder it was the #1 academy on the continent. In terms of history, Shrek had a long history. In terms of theory, the Shrek Academy definitely didn't lack theory. If it still worshipped fighting, how could it have declined with the support of the Federation? Senior, Do you know what this gate is made of? Bei Bei walked to Wang Feng's side and asked. A 138,500-year-old soul beast, the 100-battle demon-slaying lion. Wang Feng answered. Bei Bei was stunned and said in astonishment, Nian Nian is completely correct, but it's not called the 100-battle demon-slaughtering lion. That was the name many years ago. Now we call it the 100-battle demon lion. It's an extremely powerful vicious beast. During the Third Soul Beast War, which was the war between humans and soul beasts, it was killed by an expert from the Academy. After that expert didn't collect the 100-war demon-slaughtering lion's soul ring. Instead, he dissected its corpse. The bones were made into the gate of the Shrek Academy. As a warning to future generations, Shrek is king in actual combat. Many of the newcomers to the Shrek Academy will be affected by the residual power of the bone when they enter the gate for the first time. Those who are timid won't even be able to step through the door. This is also the most basic test of our Shrek Academy. If a new student didn't even have the courage to step through the door, no matter how talented he is, it's useless. Hearing this, Wang Feng nodded. These principles weren't wrong. The dean of the Shrek back then was also a person with his own ideas. You should try going in first. Tang Ye said, only after you step through the 100-battle gate can we take you to sign up for the rest of the tests. Huo nodded and gritted his teeth as he walked over. Wang Feng watched quietly. Soon, Huo failed. This gate wasn't just a test of one's willpower, it was also a test of one's soul power. However, Huo didn't give up. He tried 10 times, and when he was a little absent-minded, he stepped through. Huo didn't have enough soul power, but his willpower was still very strong. This time, Wang Feng casually stepped through. Just as his foot stepped in, a loud roar sounded in his sea of consciousness. A faint shadow appeared above the gate and roared at the person who wanted to enter. So there's a spiritual type soul skill on this bone gate. Wang Feng was a little astonished. How could there be residual power in the bones of a soul beast that was over 100,000 years old after its death? Who knew how many years its consciousness had dissipated? However, a spiritual type soul skill had been added to it. Furthermore, it had been added by a soul tool. Evidently, the Shrek Academy was also researching soul tools. This should be a type of spiritual type soul skill that could imitate the shape of the 100,000-year soul beast from back then. With the help of these bones, it would first create psychological pressure on the student. When they stepped through the gate, it would automatically activate. It would create the illusion of a 100,000-year soul beast's pressure. Senior, do you feel anything? Bei Bei asked. Students like us won't trigger this kind of pressure when we enter. Only people who have never been to the Shrek Academy will trigger it when they enter for the first time. Wang Feng shook his head. It's just SOSO. Bei Bei rubbed his nose and laughed awkwardly. Right, Senior, anyone who enters this gate has to pay 10 silver soul coins. There's such a damn rule? Wang Feng was stunned. Who said it? It's a little shady. It was set by the dean from back then. Bei Bei whispered. This dean was the founder of the Shrek Academy, Flender. Wang Feng. So the dean was a miser. I didn't expect his descendants to be so shady. Wang Feng was a little speechless. Humans and gods were different. The person from back then had already passed away. When he thought of this, Wang Feng suddenly felt a little old. Flender? Founder? He had a curious look on his face. Yes. Tang Ye chuckled. Do you want to take a look? Our Shrek Academy has a few statues of the peerless figures who dominated the continent back then. You'll only be participating in the first test in 3 months. You just have to register for your rank later. Huo nodded. He was a little excited. Senior, do you want to take a look too? Tang Ye asked Wang Feng. Let's go take a look. Wang Feng said. Tang Ye and Bei Bei looked at each other. They were a little impatient as they led the two of them to the academy's main path. The lush main path was very spacious, and there were all kinds of rare plants all around. These plants emitted pure heaven and earth origin chi, causing the heaven and earth origin chi in the academy to be much purer and denser than outside. There seemed to be quite a few statues. It was only a few 100 meters away. The group of people saw the statues in front of them. Every statue was more than 10 meters tall, and they were made of precious golden jade rock. This rock was most suitable for carving. It was especially suitable for carving figures. The figures would have a faint layer of golden light on their surface, and they would also emit a jade-like glow. They could reflect the figures' expressions, demeanor, and aura very well. At this moment, there were many students gathered around the statues. Every statue was surrounded by people. However, the statue with the most people was at the very back. It was very strange. P.S. Today's update should be 6 . End of chapter. Chapter 1086. The statues made by Jin Yuyen were very powerful. There were a few of them, and every statue was different. Every one of them was filled with a sense of history. They represented the first generation of Shrek Academy. They were very meaningful to the entire academy. Wang Feng looked at these statues. He saw many familiar faces. He was very emotional. Flender, Lu Erlong, Master. He didn't have any memories of the past 10,000 years. It was as if they were still vivid in his mind. Then, the Shrek's 7 monsters, led by Tang San, appeared in front of him. Rongrong and Zhuqing are so beautiful even after being turned into statues. Wang Feng's gaze landed on the 2 of them. Ning Rongrong's statue was the most exquisite among them. This had something to do with the way Ning Rongrong usually dressed. She was adorned with jewelry, and her hair was neatly carved. Her long hair draped over her shoulders and danced in the wind. Her eyes were bright and full of vigor. Although her delicate face wasn't real skin, it was still very beautiful. The 9 treasures star pagoda in her hand was carved with many small stars revolving around it. It was obvious that the Shrek Academy had put a lot of effort into these statues. Furthermore, these statues had been preserved so well after 10,000 years. They weren't damaged at all. They must have been repaired all year round. On the other hand, Zhu Zhuqing's charm was a notch higher. I wonder how they've been in the God Realm all these years? Wang Feng suddenly thought that Bibidon and the others were also in the God Realm. He hoped that they wouldn't fight each other. At this moment, Tangya was also introducing them to Huoyuhao. Flender. He's the founder of the Shrek Academy. He's Lu Erlong's first-generation teacher and founder. He's Yu Xiaojiang's first-generation teacher. He's the soul of many teaching concepts. These 3 teachers were known as the Golden Triangle. Tangya pointed at the 3 statues in front of her and said seriously, "Their abilities aren't considered strong in the history of the Shrek Academy. In fact, many inner courtyard students' soul power ranks exceed theirs. However, the contributions they have made are truly unique." Wang Feng looked at Lu Erlong. She was the founder of the Shrek Academy. When the Shrek Academy was driven into a corner, Lu Erlong changed the name of the Blue Tyrant Academy to the Shrek Academy, allowing the Shrek Academy to take root in Heavendo City. As for the Master, he had set many teaching principles for the Shrek Academy. It should have been when he and Tang San defeated the evil Soul Masters in the extreme north and got rid of the Soul Beast army. At that time, Dean Flender and the others were still teaching in the academy. It was not until 100 years ago that he heard from Tang San and the others that when the academy was on the right track, they went to travel the mainland. The fact that he was sealed in the 5-colored mountain was of great importance. Other than Tang San and a few others who had become gods, no one else knew about it. Are the few at the back the Shrek's 7 monsters from 10,000 years ago? Huoyuhao looked at the statues excitedly. I heard my mother tell me about them. I heard that they all became legendary god-ranked powerhouses. Tangya smiled and nodded. After that, she looked at the last statue without saying anything. The eldest is the white tiger Douluo Dai Mubai. The second is the golden flower Douluo Oscar. The third is the thousand-hand Douluo Tang San. The fourth is the evil phoenix Douluo Ma Hongjun. The fifth is the soft-bone Douluo Xiao Wu. She is the wife of our Tang sect's ancestor, Tang San. She is also 100,000-year soft-bone rabbit that cultivated into a human form. The fifth is the nine treasures Douluo Ning Rongrong. She is also the strongest auxiliary type soul master in the nine treasures glazed pagoda. The last is the dark moon Douluo Zhu Zhuqing. Among the seven monsters, the dark moon Douluo's strength is second only to our Tang sect's ancestor. Her martial soul, the dark moon fairy, has never appeared again. Below the seven statues. At this moment they were all surrounded by students. Sister Tangya, are there so many people here? Huoyu Hao was a little shocked as he looked below the statues. Of course. Bei Bei had a serious look on his face. The talents of these seven are the highest in the history of the Shrek Academy. Back then, they became God-tier soul masters. Naturally, they were worshipped by others. His popularity has never decreased over the years. After all, God-tier soul masters represent the end of the road for us soul masters. Over the past 10,000 years, how many soul masters have managed to cross that threshold? However, the seven of them have all become God-tier soul masters. You can imagine that. Huoyu Hao nodded. God-tier soul masters were a distant and unreachable thing. At this moment, Huoyu Hao seemed to have noticed something. He exclaimed, "Brother Bei Bei, why is there a statue at the back?" "It's at the back. Is he not as famous as the one at the front? But why are there the most people at his side?" The last statue was at the back, so it wasn't very clear. However, most of the people surrounding it were girls. So many girls. Oh my God! Huoyu Hao's heart was in a mess. The area below the statue was completely packed. More than 80% of them were girls. Furthermore, there were more of them than the statues at the front. As they were quite far away, Huoyu Hao could still faintly hear many people arguing. Cough cough. Tangya coughed a few times and said, "This person is considered one of the best on the continent. He's a legend among legends. This statue isn't just here. The Tang sect also has one. Every large sect has one. Even the Central Martial Soul Palace has one. However, this one is a little different." After hearing this, Huoyu Hao seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly said, "I know who he is. I heard from my mother. He should be the dream of millions of girls on the continent. He's a legendary man who's like a god. He's the most handsome and peerless person in the world. No one knows who he is, right?" Wang Feng was speechless. I didn't expect these people in the future to have such good taste." Wang Feng couldn't help but think. In the Shrek Academy, he's called Nine Openings. His real name is Wang Feng. Bei Bei looked at the statue and sighed. In the Tang sect, he's the Grand Elder. In the Central Martial Soul Palace, he was once the white-clothed Pope Diff. Huoyu Hao was astonished. So many identities? He only knew one. Nine Openings. It was widely known among the people. The main reason was that this name was too meaningful. "No wonder there are so many girls," Huoyu Hao said. "Let's go. I'll bring you to see him." Tangya glanced at Wang Feng. The group walked towards the last statue. Wang Feng also saw his own statue. It was the image of Nine Openings in the past. He was wearing a black robe and a white mask. However, only half of his face was revealed. He looked exactly like Huoyu Hao. Naturally, his appearance couldn't have changed. Apart from that, the mysterious underworld spike, which was the symbol of Nine Openings, also appeared behind the statue. He raised his head slightly. He had a majestic aura. Although only half of his face was revealed, it was still shocking. Apart from that, the statue's other hand held a mysterious green lotus martial soul. It emitted a brilliant divine aura. End of chapter. Chapter 1087. Is he wearing half a mask? Huo Yuhao asked curiously as he walked over. Only half a mask, Bei Bei stared at the statue. Only the statue of the white-clothed Popetiff in the core area of the Central Martial Spirit Palace. Why is there only half a mask? Huo Yuhao looked at the half-face and felt that it was a little familiar. There's a story behind this. Tang Ye chuckled. Legend has it that 100 years after the continent agreed, these statues were already built. The first leader of the Federation, Bibidon, agreed. Later on, the Federation invited a great sculptor to erect a monument and a statue for these people. This was especially true for a legendary figure like Nine Open. There were a few statues. Unfortunately, this great sculptor only managed to complete the first statue of the white-clothed Popetiff and placed it in the Central Martial Spirit Palace. But when it came to the second statue, I was unable to carve out a complete statue. Every statue only had half a face. Huo Yuhao was shocked when he heard this. Wang Feng was also curious as he listened. Little Yuhao, do you know the reason? Tang Ye asked. Huo Yuhao shook his head. It's very simple, Tang Ye shrugged. Back then, when this master sculptor was carving the second statue, he had only carved half of the face before he was completely infatuated. He was bewitched by the white-robed Pope's charm. His sculpting skills were greatly reduced, and he was unable to carve the other half of the face. Later on, several generations of great sculptors refused to believe this. After going to the Central Martial Spirit Palace to see the complete statue, they decided to complete the rest of the statues. However, after coming out of the Central Martial Spirit Palace, none of them were able to complete the 911 face. They were all mesmerized by the white-clothed Popetiff's face. Later on, many great sculptors claimed that they were unable to carve the complete 911 face. Forcibly carving it was blasphemy and disrespect. They were unable to cross the hurdle in their hearts. They never touched a carving knife again in the latter half of their lives. After hearing this, Huo Yuhao was stunned. What the F***ck is it that mysterious? Therefore, not many people in the world know of Jiu Ikai's complete and peerless appearance. However, just this half of his face is enough to make many of our Shrek's academies confused and disoriented. Tang Ye sighed. In our academy, there are many talented female students from the inner courtyard who would risk their lives to enter the Central Martial Spirit Palace. Do you think it's for power and strength? No. That's because they want to see for themselves the peerless charm of that white-robed Popetiff. Wang Feng. To be honest, Wang Feng was a little confused. Even he himself was shocked when he heard the story. Was it that exaggerated? However, even though the deified avatar looked the same as the original body, it was different. However, there was still a difference in temperament. Temperament didn't just refer to one's appearance. It also referred to the unique charm that a person exuded from the inside out. With his rank 100 soul power and his chaotic green lotus martial soul, there was indeed a difference. However, after giving it some thought, Wang Feng roughly understood what was going on. Sister Tang Ye, why do I feel like I've seen this half of his face somewhere before? Huo Yuhao was a little confused. He looked at Wang Feng and said, Teacher, don't you think this half of his face is a little familiar? Teacher, you look a little similar. Halfway through his sentence, Huo Yuhao was stunned. Tang Ye and Bei Bei's gazes also landed on Wang Feng. They had already sensed it before. They didn't know how many times they had seen this statue. Tang Ye was in a hurry to come back because she wanted to confirm whether this statue was really the same as this mysterious expert. Now it seemed like they were really the same. Could he really be the descendant of Wang Feng, the Tang sect's Grand Elder? Tang Ye and Bei Bei looked at each other. Similar? Wang Feng shook his head and said, How can Jiu Ikai compare to me? After hearing this, Tang Ye and Bei Bei were stunned. See, teacher, do you know Jiu Ikai? Huo Yuhao was also stunned. Of course I know him, Wang Feng said shamelessly. He used my alias, Wang Feng, to roam the world. It's because I taught him all his skills. Therefore, He used my name and used other aliases such as Jiu E Kai, white-clothed Popediff, and so on. After hearing this, Tangya and Bei Bei were petrified. Say, Senior, you. Tangya stuttered as she looked at Wang Feng. Is he related to you? Of course. Wang Feng continued, he's my descendant. I'm his ancestor. His real name is Wang Hao. The two of them opened their mouths wide and looked at Wang Feng in shock. He must be spouting nonsense, right? He must be, right? Even if he's awesome, he shouldn't brag like this, right? Then teacher is, Huoyu Hao asked carefully, could it be that you've lived for 10,000 years? After saying it out loud, Huoyu Hao felt that this question was a little stupid. How could a person live for so long? Even a God-ranked expert couldn't live for 10,000 years, right? Tangya and Bei Bei laughed awkwardly. If it were someone else, the two of them would think that he was mentally ill. However, this mysterious expert, Wang Feng, was indeed extraordinary. However, they didn't believe it at all. This was an answer that the two of them didn't expect. Tangya thought that this mysterious expert, Wang Feng, was the descendant of the great elder of the Tang sect. However, she didn't expect this mysterious expert, Wang Feng, to say that he was the ancestor of the great elder Wang Feng. He even said that the great elder Wang Feng's real name was Wang Hao? What's 10,000 years? Wang Feng shook his head and said, I don't even know how long I've lived. At this moment, Long Xie, who was in the soul domain, couldn't help but laugh. Boss, you're too shameless. How can you be your own ancestor? Wang Feng said seriously, back then, I sensed that I still had a descendant in this world. It was Wang Hao. So I found him and taught him for a period of time. I activated the martial soul hidden in his body. That's why you guys met 9-1 Kai and White Popediff later on. However, I didn't expect that kid to be able to make a name for himself. However, since he received my inheritance, how can he be unknown? After saying that, Wang Feng sighed. He made it sound like he was talking about something. At this moment, a crisp voice sounded from behind. Nonsense. 9-1 Kai is an expert who has surpassed the god level. Who are you? How dare you call yourself his ancestor? Her clear voice was filled with an overbearing aura. It was obvious that the owner of this voice was a proud person. However, there was a hint of respect for 9-1 Kai in his voice. Hence, there was a hint of anger in his voice. Although this voice was crisp, it was very loud. It attracted the attention of the people who were gathered in front of the statue. The moment they were drawn over, they were all stunned. At the same time, Wang Feng turned around and looked at the owner of the crisp voice. He was also an extraordinarily handsome young man. He looked about the same age as Huoyu Hao. However, his face was as white as jade and his eyes were like stars. When Wang Feng turned around, the young man's body shook. He was stunned by Wang Feng's appearance. At this moment, many people even rubbed their eyes. They wondered if they were seeing things. This was because they could see clearly that the mysterious young man in front of them looked very similar to 9-1 Kai's face on the statue. End of chapter. Chapter 1088. Wow, he's so handsome. Why does he look so much like Jiu Ikai? Could he be Jiu Ikai's descendant? But it's been 10,000 years. Even if he has descendants, they should have changed a lot, right? Didn't you hear what that youth said? This person claims to be Jiu Ikai's ancestor. Where's his ancestor? He gave Jiu Ikai pointers. He's so handsome when he's bragging. Everyone started whispering. Oh! Wang Feng raised his eyebrows and looked at the youth. He couldn't help but laugh. If I say so, then so be it. If you don't believe me, then don't believe me. For some reason, the youth had a strange feeling as he looked at the mysterious youth in front of him. It was very strange. There was a kind of closeness that made it hard for him to be angry. What was even more shocking was that the other half of this youth's face was exactly the same as the white-clothed Popediff Wang Feng. I think you're pretending to be Uncle Feng. Senior Jiu Ikai, right? The youth looked around coldly. Otherwise, maybe you're the Wang Hao you're talking about? You, Wang Feng, are your ancestor, and you are Wang Feng's descendant? If not, you can show your soul power and rank, and everything will be clear. Jiui Kai is an expert who surpasses the god rank. As his ancestor, you're naturally stronger than him. Wang Feng laughed when he heard this. Why do I need others to prove and explain my actions? Just treat it as I'm talking nonsense. The youth was speechless. After he finished speaking, Wang Feng left. Tangya and Bei Bei looked at each other as if they were saying, could it be true? The difference in strength between the two was too great. It couldn't be true at all. However, this mysterious expert Wang Feng didn't give any explanation. This made them even more suspicious. Huoyu Hao also hurriedly left. The youth looked at Wang Feng's back, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. Tangya and Bei Bei didn't ask about the statue anymore. However, they still had doubts in their hearts. However, Wang Feng's appearance brought a huge shock to the Shrek Academy. No matter what, with his face being so similar to the 9-1 opened half of his face, it was bound to attract attention. Wang Feng had wanted to take a look at the exact location of the Sea God's Pavilion, but he had left the Shrek Academy in advance and found a hotel to rest. He planned to visit the Shrek Academy tomorrow. Huoyu Hao, on the other hand, had officially entered Shrek Academy as a specially invited student. Wang Feng didn't care too much about it. He just wanted to let him develop on his own. At this stage, he had already taught them what he needed to tell them. The atmosphere of the academy was something he should have experienced at his age. On the contrary, it was useless for him to stay by his side. It seems like little Wudong really went down to the lower domain. Wang Feng recalled the young man he saw during the day. With his perception, he could easily see through the other party's disguise. Little 3, you've lost contact with the Douluo continent. How could you be so careless as to let your daughter sneak into the lower realm? Wang Feng was speechless. This was not a good thing. Could it be that he had to help the mistress take a look at her daughter? Forget it, let nature take its course. Wang Feng pondered. Little Wudong's memories seemed to have been partially sealed. She had descended from the god realm without permission. She wasn't a god. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be as simple as her memories being sealed. Unless someone from the lower domain helped her. It should be Great Ming and Second Ming? After the two of them were revived by Tang San, they were arranged to take over the Clear Sky sect according to Little Three's description. He thought for a while. Wang Feng sighed and released Long Xie. Boss, that young man's aura seems familiar. Did he come to see you a long time ago? He lay on the ground. He rolled on the ground lazily. Before he came to the Shrek Academy, Long Xie's cultivation had reached 1,000 years. After cultivating beside Wang Feng and absorbing Wang Feng's drop of essence blood, Long Xie's abilities had skyrocketed. However, he still needed some time to reach 10,000 years. Wang Feng's soul power had also increased by 2 ranks. In just a few days, his abilities had improved significantly. After 1,000 years, Long Xie had another soul skill, soul-devouring crag dragon wave. It was a special soul skill. As Long Xie's spirit was filled with evil thoughts, this didn't change. After fusing with this crag dragon, Wang Feng's drop of essence blood and life soul contract made this crag dragon extraordinary. As his cultivation increased, it slowly changed. The more he cultivated, the greater the change. This soul-devouring crag dragon wave was a special soul skill. There were 2 situations. One was passive. It could devour an enemy's energy attack and reflect it back to the enemy. The other was to spit out a dirt yellow light wave that could petrify an enemy, causing great damage to the enemy. According to normal circumstances, Wang Feng's soul power should be around rank 30 right now. However, the amount of soul power required for 7 purple origin sources was simply too much. Just the first one was far from enough. Wang Feng could only fill the purple origin with the large amount of soul power he had absorbed and compressed it to a high degree. She did come to see me. Wang Feng nodded. That's interesting. Long Xie chuckled. She's not your brother's daughter, is she? It seems like there's a problem in the god realm. By the way, why do you want to go to the sea god's pavilion? What's so good about that place? Wang Feng smiled. He thought to himself, you won't know where the system is even if I tell you. I want to revisit the place and reminisce about the past. Wang Feng said casually. Bullshit. Long Xie said indignantly. There are many strong people in the sea god's pavilion. I think you want me to be beaten up, don't you? If you want to enter the sea god's pavilion, the people from the Shrek Academy will make many requests. If I force my way in, I'll be beaten up even more. If they fight, you'll have to let me fight. Brother Lin hasn't come out yet. Long Xie was smart. He guessed it right away. Isn't that good? Wang Feng was surprised. The more you're beaten up, the faster your cultivation will improve. At the same time, you can help me spread the life-soul contract. I'll benefit more from it too. He did benefit from it. 1,000-year Long Xie. Wang Feng's first soul ring had reached the 1,000-year level. It had turned from white to purple. It had a low starting point, but it grew so fast that it made people's hair stand on end. The 1,000-year rock dragon strike was very strong. The increase in attack and defense went from 50% to 200%. At the same time, it had the special effect of rock transformation and rock power. Rock power, as the name suggested, was a special force that could be sent into the enemy's body through contact. The effect of this special rock force was directly effective on soul power. It would make the enemy's soul power stagnant and difficult to use. Rock power and rock power, one on the outside and one on the inside. Even the 10,000-year centipede wouldn't be able to escape from his punch. This was the result of the life-soul contract granting the soul ring the ability to grow. End of chapter. Chapter 1089. His soul skill had evolved, and it wasn't just simply becoming stronger. Soul skill evolution referred to the acquisition of new abilities. The strengthening of soul skills was merely an increase in their original abilities. For most soul masters, it was almost impossible for their soul skills to evolve. Soul skills would only become stronger as their soul power increased. However, a life-soul contract was enough. You're right. Long Xie flipped over. Boss, I discovered that this crag dragon seems to possess a trace of the dragon god's bloodline. Normally, this bloodline shouldn't be awakened. The probability of this happening is 1 in a million. However, your essence blood is amazing. It's very likely that it will awaken the bloodline in this rock dragon. When that happens, I might possess the purest dragon god's bloodline. Wang Feng was stunned when he heard this. He had heard from Long Xie that the dragon god had 9 direct descendants. They all possessed the purest dragon god's bloodline. All of them were very strong. The Di Tian that Long Xie mentioned in the Great Star Do Forest was a descendant of one of these bloodlines. Which one? Wang Feng asked. I'm not telling you. Long Xie chuckled. However, this bloodline is too weak. If I want to fully awaken this bloodline, I might need a few more drops of your essence blood to help me evolve a few more times. How dare you keep me in suspense? Wang Feng chuckled. I know which bloodline it is. Don't worry. If that's the case, it's fine. It was easy to guess. He could guess it based on the crag dragon's attribute. However, Wang Feng didn't expect this to happen. With his essence blood, he was able to awaken the crag dragon's bloodline. Wang Feng guessed that it wasn't as simple as 1 or 2 drops. After all, if this crag dragon really did possess the dragon god's bloodline, it would be extremely weak. Long Xie was conservative about the probability of 1 in a million. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was 1 in a million. Normally, it was impossible for a bloodline to awaken. Such a bloodline was too weak, so it didn't have any effect on the crag dragon. This was why the crag dragon was an ordinary soul beast. Speaking of which, I wonder if Lin Jun has changed? Long Xie was quite curious. I feel like this is called being born from an egg. There should be some changes. It's no longer just the Lin Lord of Ice Empress who controls the absolute ice power of heaven and earth. Wang Feng smiled. It would probably take a few more days. He would be able to see it soon. The man and the beast chatted for a while. He continued to cultivate until the next day. The next day, Wang Feng went to Shrek Academy again. Big brother Wang, I've told the Academy about your desire to go to the Sea God's Pavilion. It might be a little troublesome, Bei Bei said somewhat helplessly. Because of what happened yesterday, the Academy also knows about it. 9-1 Kai is an extremely respected figure in the Academy. To be more precise, he is an extremely respected figure in the continent. You said those words again. The Academy doesn't have a good impression of you. However, the Academy doesn't intend to make things difficult for you. If you want to enter the Sea God's Pavilion, you have to be acknowledged by it. Bei Bei and Tangya had already done everything that he could. Today, Shrek Academy was divided into two departments, the inner and outer departments. The outer court was equivalent to the 6th grade of primary school. The inner yard was the middle and high schools. Of course, this was just an analogy. There were a total of 12 school years. They were divided into two major departments, the Martial Soul Department and the Soul Tool Department. Bei Bei and Tang Yu were both from the outer court. If they wanted to enter the Sea God's Pavilion as students from the outer court, it would be impossible. However, their identities were special. One was the sect master of the Tang sect, while the other was a direct disciple of the Blue Lightning Tyrant sect. The Tang sect had always had a good relationship with Shrek Academy. Only with this relationship could there be room for negotiation. Otherwise, just anyone would want to enter the Sea God's Pavilion. With Shrek Academy's pride, they wouldn't even bother with the other party. Who's the current pavilion master of the Sea God's Pavilion? Wang Feng asked. The inner court calls him Elder Xian, Bei Bei said carefully. He's a rank 99 titled Doulu. His abilities are very frightening. At the same time, he's one of the 3 honorary heavenly kings of the Central Martial Soul Palace, Heavenly King Taotai. Wang Feng nodded slightly. The 12 heavenly kings came from the 3 political districts. Every political district had 4 spots. These 12 Douluo heavenly kings all had the right to make decisions. Other than their abilities, they also had a lot of power. Honorary heavenly kings were specially created. They only had reputation, and represented the Federation's supreme martial power. They didn't have the power to make decisions. This was mainly because the Shrek Academy had a special status. They wouldn't participate in political affairs. Therefore, the master of the Sea God's Pavilion couldn't become one of the 12 heavenly kings. Otherwise, the Shrek Academy would have too much power. Once the Academy was mixed with power, the Academy's original intentions would be influenced by political affairs. Their goals would become impure. With the title of Honorary Heavenly King, the Shrek Academy could implement many strict rules. These strict rules were the reason why Shrek Academy was able to continue to prosper and flourish for so long. The other 2 honorary heavenly kings are on Sea God's Island and in the extreme north. Bei Bei said, these honorary heavenly kings are a symbol of honor. They are also a symbol of the Federation's recognition. There are only 3 spots. Wang Feng nodded slightly and said, let's go. I want to see how difficult it is to enter the Sea God's Pavilion. Tangya and Bei Bei nodded, and brought Wang Feng towards the Shrek Academy. The Shrek Academy seemed to be especially lively today. The reason for the liveliness was naturally because of Wang Feng's words in front of the statue yesterday, as well as his appearance. When Tangya and Bei Bei brought Wang Feng into the Shrek Academy again, there were many people on both sides of the main road. They were all watching excitedly. However, these were all outer courtyard students. Tangya and Bei Bei braced themselves and brought Wang Feng along the main road. They walked past the different-colored teaching buildings. They came to the shore of a man-made lake. Dense heaven and earth yuan qi surged towards them. The lake's surface was sparkling, and it rippled with an intoxicating halo. There was a small island in the center of the lake that was a few thousand meters in radius. On the island was the Sea God's Pavilion. The reason why it was called the Sea God's Pavilion was because during the fourth Soul Beast formation, the Sea God's Island was of great help to humans in the battle between the aquatic soul beasts and the land creatures. In addition, Tang San of the Shrek's 7 monsters had become a god-ranked expert and was respectfully called the Sea God. The Shrek Academy built the Sea God's Pavilion. It gathered the most powerful experts in the academy, as well as the most talented students. There was no path that led to the small island in the center. You could either fly or swim over. At this moment, in front of the small island, there were a few teachers standing on the shore. Their expressions were cold and solemn. Every one of them exuded an unusually strong aura. "You are Wang Feng? I heard from Xiaoya that you want to enter the Sea God's Pavilion?" A woman who was about 40 years old walked out from the front. She revealed a meaningful smile on her face. "You dare to call yourself the ancestor of the white-clothed Popedif Wang Feng. Do you know that if the Central Martial Spirit Palace finds out, you will be committing a crime? P.S. More updates tomorrow. That's all for today. End of chapter. Chapter 1090. A refreshing breeze blew by the lakeside. If it was in the past, many students and couples would enjoy this refreshing breeze together. But now it was just a breeze that brushed past their shoulders. They were all focused in front. By the lakeside, the surrounding students looked at the confrontation between the mysterious man and the teachers. It was a crime to say that it was a crime. If it was just a statue of someone else's ancestor, it wouldn't be a big deal. Even the academy wouldn't care too much. But the white-clothed Popedif Wang Feng was too special. Not only was he very popular in the Shrek Academy, but he was also very popular in the entire Federation. The reason was simple. In the 5 Soul Beast Wars back then, 3 of them were related to the 8 overlords of the extreme north. They had repeatedly helped humans at critical moments. And the reason why these 8 overlords helped was because of the white-clothed Popedif Wang Feng. It was rumored that the white-clothed Popedif and the 8 overlords of the extreme north were partners. Therefore, the Federation attached great importance to this. This teacher wasn't wrong. If the Federation knew that someone dared to call himself the white-clothed Popedif old ancestor, it would be a crime. However, Wang Feng merely smiled. These people obviously wanted to intimidate him by bringing up this matter to intimidate him. They didn't really want to do it. Otherwise, the Shrek Academy would have already reported yesterday's matter to the Federation headquarters. It's useless to say more. Wang Feng looked at the Sea God's Pavilion on the island in the middle of the lake. If the Shrek Academy has any tricks, then use them. I came here to enter the Sea God's Pavilion, not to argue with you about who I am. This is not important. The teachers on the opposite side were stunned. For a moment, they looked at the mysterious man in front of them and didn't know how to deal with him. They were really here to show off their strength to Wang Feng. If they really wanted to deal with him, they just had to tell the Federation's Martial Spirit Palace, and the Federation headquarters would have sent people over as early as last night. However, they didn't do so. In fact, they wanted to do so, but they were suppressed by the dean. It was very strange. Wang Fengxin said. If the Central Martial Spirit Palace really had a complete statue of him, they would know. They would definitely know that he looked exactly the same as Wang Feng. If they really sent someone here, they would definitely know that he looked exactly the same as Wang Feng. It was impossible for them to denounce him. At most, they would come to inquire. Wang Feng wasn't afraid of causing trouble. He had the capital to cause trouble. He was no longer the old Wang Feng who had to calculate the strength of both sides before doing anything. he still had to worry about the threat of a titled Douluo. He didn't need to do that to practice his trumpet now. Therefore, he had never worn a mask. Good lad, he's already showing off his moves. One of the teachers muttered, crazy enough. At this time, Wang Feng spoke again. Look at your Shrek Academy's gate. It's carved from the bones of a war-crazed magician, and the school motto is that actual combat is king. Why don't we just make a move? Inside the Soul Domain, Long Xie roared, Boss, you're the one who started this. How many punches do I have to take? It's all for your own good. Wang Feng transmitted his voice. Don't worry. I'll deal with those who are too weak. I won't let you out. Long Xie was speechless, hearing Wang Feng's words. In an instant, the air seemed to have solidified. The surrounding students were in an uproar. Tangya and Bei Bei were sweating profusely. This mysterious expert really didn't follow the rules. He didn't even wait for the teachers to show their skills before he directly made his move and started to fight. Now, the teachers of the academy were the ones in a passive position. Good. The middle-aged woman who spoke first laughed. However, can I see this as a challenge to the Shrek Academy? Although she was laughing, everyone could feel the coldness in her words. The other teachers were the same. They couldn't help but release their auras. Wang Feng smiled but didn't say anything. Then let's go to the soul dueling area. He's right. The middle-aged woman said plainly, actual combat is king. I agree with him. Since you want to challenge the Shrek Academy, we'll accompany you to the end. If you have the strength, the Sea God's Pavilion will naturally open its doors for you. I'm Zhou Yi, an outer courtyard teacher. You're not challenging me alone. You're challenging the Shrek Academy. Teacher Zhou Yi's tone was ice-cold, and an amused expression surfaced on her seemingly aged face. The soul dueling area. It was a fighting arena that Shrek Academy had specially set up for students to fight in. It was also the most lively place in the academy. For soul masters, fighting was the most direct way to show their strength. Apart from that, it was also a place for soul masters to earn extra money. It was also one of the requirements for entering a higher school. However, it was rare for a teacher-level figure to step onto the soul dueling arena today. This mysterious and handsome man actually wanted to challenge the Shrek Academy. This was a big deal. One had to know that the teachers of the Shrek Academy, even those of the outer courtyard, were at least soul emperors. The news swept through the outer courtyard like a gust of wind. Even many students of the inner courtyard rushed over. Sea God's Pavilion, in a conference room. Who is this Wang Feng? There were only a few people at the oval table in the spacious conference room. Pavilion Master and Elder Mu aren't here, and Dean Yen has gone to the Martial Spirit Palace. It's not easy to deal with this person. Are we really going to let him challenge the Shrek Academy? A woman in her 30s frowned as she spoke. To be honest, there have been a lot of people who have dared to get involved with those people and try to sneak into the academy. Descendants of Tang San's illegitimate son, descendants of the Flender Academy's distant relatives, descendants of the evil phoenix Douluo, who showed mercy in the brothel to suppress her evil fire. There are simply too many of them. We've seen a lot. However, this is the first time I've seen someone who dares to get involved with the white-clothed popediff. A sturdy man in his 40s or 50s laughed. However, this is a good thing. We just have to watch from the sidelines. Xiao Qian is right. A gentle laugh sounded. Our Shrek Academy isn't afraid of challenges. It doesn't matter who he pretends to be, but if he's strong enough, it's not impossible for him to enter the Sea God's Pavilion. Le Xuan, as the eldest senior sister of the Sea God's Pavilion, you're already a 7-ringed soul sage. Go out and take a look at the situation. See how strong this Wang Feng is. Yes. A gentle voice was heard. Soul dueling area. This was Huo Yuhao's first time coming to this place. It was located in the north of the Martial Soul Department's campus. It was very wide, and it was an independent building. The building was hollow, and one could see the lively scene inside from the outside. End of chapter. Chapter 1091. Soul dueling arenas were built using special soul tools. There were two types of soul dueling arenas. The first type was a pure white, low-level soul dueling arena. The second type was a pure black, high-level soul dueling arena. These soul dueling arenas were developed by the Soul Tool Department. The difference between high-level and low-level soul dueling arenas was whether they could withstand an attack from a soul sage. Most outer courtyard students used white, low-level soul dueling arenas. Black soul dueling arenas were usually used by teachers for teaching. Because teachers were relatively strong, they would often step onto black soul dueling arenas when they demonstrated their fighting skills to their students. Hence, they were called teaching soul dueling arenas. Shrek Academy focused on actual combat. Naturally, they established a soul dueling area to nurture their students' combat abilities. Usually, a sixth-year student would have to go through countless battles and ascend the soul dueling stage countless times. Shrek Academy had the most soul dueling arenas among the many academies on the continent. Inside this semicircular building, there were hundreds of soul dueling arenas, which were densely packed together. Every day, this place was packed with people. On the other side, there were 20 black soul dueling arenas. Wang Feng scanned them with his spiritual power. These soul dueling arenas were constructed with many complicated mechanisms. They weren't purely made of rare construction materials. Soul dueling arenas from 10,000 years ago were rarely suitable for soul tools. They were usually made of very special materials. They increased one's endurance. "He's your master?" At this moment, a youth was looking at Huo Yuhao with an arrogant look on his face. "It's one thing for your master to pretend to be the ancestor of the 9-1 Open sect. He even dared to challenge Shrek Academy to enter the Sea God's Pavilion. Other things aside, not many people have this kind of courage. However, according to my understanding of the Sea God's Pavilion, he doesn't stand a chance." When Huo Yuhao heard this, he frowned and looked at the youth unhappily. This youth was the one who had doubted his teacher. Huo Yuhao hadn't expected this youth to be his roommate after he'd successfully been assigned a dorm room. "Wang Dong, my teacher isn't just courageous. He's also strong," Huo Yuhao retorted. "He'll definitely enter the Sea God's Pavilion." He'd thought that this youth was an upperclassman. However, he hadn't expected him to be the same as him. He'd just entered the academy. They both had the same starting point, so he wasn't afraid of the other party. I've done my research on the Sea God's Pavilion before coming here." Wang Dong snorted coldly. The Sea God's Pavilion is the core of the Shrek Academy. Even among the inner court disciples, there were only a few who could enter. Inside was the most powerful group of people in Shrek Academy. It was the place where the elders of the academy resided. They are at least titled Doulu. Even ordinary teachers aren't qualified to enter that place. Only those at the level of the principal and vice principal can enter. Do you think your teacher has the ability to do so? The two of them argued. Huo Yuhao's face turned red. "We'll only know if I have that ability after we fight. Teacher isn't an ordinary soul master." He suddenly recalled that his teacher's soul power was only around rank 10. The students of the Sea God's Pavilion were all soul emperors at the very least. For example, the teachers from the outer yard on the stage. According to Bei, one of them was a teacher who had just entered the school. He was extremely difficult to deal with. Not to mention the teachers from the outer yard, even many of the students couldn't compare to him in terms of soul power. However, Huo Yuhao recalled that a teacher's strength couldn't be judged by his soul power rank. "Then let's make a bet." The youth called Wang Dong suddenly laughed. "You won against me in the dormitory yesterday. If this teacher of yours, let's not talk about entering the Sea God's Pavilion, but if he can defeat these teachers, I'll call you my boss. If he doesn't win, then you'll call me boss. I don't want to be your boss, nor do I want to call you boss. Huo Yuhao shook his head. I don't want to use my teacher's victory as a bet. Hearing this, Wang Dong immediately looked at Huo Yuhao in astonishment. I couldn't tell that you had such feelings for your teacher. However, with your talent and aptitude, there's an 80% chance that you were invited by the Shrek Academy. The fact that he accepted you as his disciple proves that his eyesight is ordinary. Heh, Huo Yuhao said, but yesterday you were defeated by me, a person with an ordinary innate talent? Wang Dong immediately shut his mouth. However, there was a hint of unwillingness in his eyes. After entering the dormitory yesterday, he'd heard that this youth was the disciple of the self-proclaimed 9 founding ancestor. He'd been unhappy at that time, so he'd ruthlessly mocked him and planned to teach him a lesson. However, seeing that his opponent was too weak, he didn't have a martial soul. However, who would have thought that he'd actually lose? At this moment, the outrageously handsome Wang Feng had finally stepped onto the soul dueling stage. Watch the show. Wang Dong's mouth curved into a smile. On the stage, Wang Feng quietly stood on the stage with a peerless grace. Without mentioning anything else, his appearance and aura alone were enough to make most of the students fall head over heels for him. However, the teachers in front of him were clearly older, and had experienced the ups and downs of the world. Naturally, they wouldn't be affected too much. Immediately, the teacher called Zhou Yi took a step forward, and 6 soul rings flickered on her body. 3 purple and 3 black. A true soul emperor. Her martial soul was a ruler. A pharaoh. Fuck, I was wondering why this martial soul gave me a familiar feeling, so it's that old monster Zhou Yi. She's a famous demonic teacher from the outer courtyard. Less than 50% of the students under her tutelage remain. I heard that she used to teach the 6th grade, but because her methods were too harsh, she was demoted to the 1st grade. I wonder which class will be so unlucky this year. You'll know once you see her martial soul. Which student isn't afraid of her? A pharaoh. One could imagine the power of a teacher who had such a tool as her martial soul. Furthermore, it wasn't an ordinary pharaoh, but a dark steel pharaoh. Whoever dared to disobey would be hit by the pharaoh. Zhou Yi, teacher in charge of Year 1 Class 5. Rank 67 Soul Emperor. Martial Soul, Dark Steel Pharaoh. Zhou Yi narrowed her eyes as she looked at the man in front of her. There weren't many teachers in the outer courtyard who were stronger than her. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been pushed out to negotiate with this mysterious Wang Feng. In fact, they hadn't expected him to step onto the soul dueling stage. In their original plan, they'd only wanted to make things difficult for him. They'd just let him leave. After all, they'd seen such a situation before. However, they'd never expected him to take the initiative to attack. So many years have passed, and you're still signing up for the same battle. Wang Feng found it a little funny. However, this was his goal today, so he opened his mouth and said, Wang Feng, rank 18 Soul Contract Master. Martial Soul, Angel. End of chapter. Chapter 1092. In an instant. After hearing this, the entire crowd quieted down. The 3 words level 18 simply caused everyone present to be dumbfounded. Even the teachers were stunned for a long time. Their minds were filled with question marks, and they were astonished. Rank 18? Was he messing with them? This kind of shock came from the excessively high expectations in many people's hearts. They'd originally thought that this shockingly handsome mysterious person definitely had some ability since he'd dared to call himself the 9 Founders' ancestor. At the very least, he was a Soul Emperor and Soul Sage, right? Otherwise, why would he dare to challenge Shrek Academy? Just this. Wang Dong was stunned for a long time. Huo Yuhao, your teacher wants to enter the Sea God's Pavilion with his strength? This is simply a fool's dream. Don't even talk about these teachers, I feel like I can defeat him. I'm 3 ranks higher than him. My God, he's truly a waste of his looks. Teacher can easily defeat a 10,000-year savage beast. Huo Hao defended himself. His strength can't be judged by common sense. He's a soul contract master. Although he said this, Huo Hao was still somewhat worried. If his teacher was a soul contract master, wouldn't it cause a commotion once he released his soul beast? Teacher probably wants to bring the soul contract master to greater heights, right? Shrek Academy is the most influential academy on the continent, Huo Hao thought to himself. Teacher became famous in a single battle, so soul contract masters will definitely become famous in Shrek Academy. I'll be able to use Little Silver in battle in the future. This was a completely new profession. Huo Hao didn't dare to release Little Silver. After all, if others found out that he was raising a soul beast, the academy definitely wouldn't agree. Teacher clearly did this for the sake of not being discriminated against and treated differently in the academy. Thinking of this, Huo Hao felt moved. Teacher wasn't rashly trying to challenge Shrek Academy. A purple soul ring rose from Wang Feng's body and disappeared in a flash. There was only one soul ring, which meant that Wang Feng wasn't wrong. To the majority of soul masters today, a one-ringed 1,000-year soul ring wasn't much. This was especially true for the geniuses of Shrek Academy. Their starting point was a one-ringed 1,000-year soul ring. Zhou Yi stared at Wang Feng for a long time, but she couldn't see anything wrong with him. It really was a level 18 fluctuation. One ring for 1,000 years. However, Tangya and Beibei, who were below, were shocked. When they had first met, Huo Hao's soul rings had only been pale yellow. It had only been a week, it turned purple just like that? Soul rings can be upgraded automatically? Am I seeing things? Beibei lowered his voice. It's clearly a yellow soul ring. How did it become a purple soul ring in less than 10 days? Could it be that the soul beast has also become a 1,000-year soul beast? Could it be that this is what a soul renderer is? Tangya was in disbelief. Soul rings were almost impossible to upgrade. Even those rank 99 titled Douluo only had their first soul rings from 100 or 1,000 years ago. This is too amazing. Both of them knew what it meant if their soul rings could be upgraded. This meant limitless possibilities. Every soul master had limitless possibilities. As Wang Feng's soul rings shone, the crowd, which had been quiet for a while, erupted into discussions. The few teachers were a little embarrassed. This was because it wasn't easy for them to make a move now. A soul emperor bullying a rank 10 soul master. After all, Shrek Academy still wanted to maintain some dignity. They had originally thought that Huo Hao was a tough nut to crack. Who would have thought that he was just toying with them? At this moment, a figure jumped onto the stage and spoke with a clear voice. Teachers, I'm a new student. My name is Wang Dong. My soul power is at rank 21. Why don't you let me fight with him? I really like fighting too. Huo Hao was a little confused as he looked at Wang Dong. When did he jump onto the stage? Everyone was also a little surprised as they looked at the youth. Zhou Yi glanced at Wang Dong. Her eyes flashed slightly as she withdrew her martial soul. After exchanging glances with the other teachers, he nodded his head in agreement. Wang Feng didn't mind. Everything was within his expectations. In the beginning, Wang Feng hadn't thought of spreading the word about soul renderers in the Shrek Academy. He had wanted to wait for a period of time before going to the Central Martial Soul Palace. However, after arriving at the Shrek Academy, he discovered that the influence of the current Shrek Academy was simply too great. He wanted to use this as an opportunity to spread the word about soul renderers so that everyone could understand the concept of soul renderers. This little girl. Wang Feng glanced at Wang Dong. You don't have any objections, right? Wang Dong narrowed his eyes as he looked at the mysterious youth in front of him. If I can't convince the people of the Shrek Academy, I won't be able to enter the Sea God's Pavilion. Wang Feng waved his hand. Since you want it, you can come and give it a try. After hearing this, A smile appeared on Wang Dong's face. Then I won't be polite. With that, Wang Dong shouted softly. In that instant, 2 purple soul rings lit up from Wang Dong's body. A pair of beautiful butterfly wings extended from Wang Dong's back. They were blue, but there were many ancient patterns on them. They were layered from top to bottom, and they flickered with a deep blue and light blue radiance. An aura of light radiated from the ancient patterns. A gem-like halo flickered around the wings. Sunlight shone on the wings, causing them to be filled with a magnificent radiance. They were like treasures in the human world. "It's the radiant butterfly goddess," someone exclaimed. It was the most beautiful butterfly martial soul in the continent. It was also the most elite beast martial soul. Beautiful strength transcended the boundaries of species. Such a beautiful martial soul made Wang Feng very surprised. Tang San and Xiao Wu's daughter, how could she have such a martial soul? It wasn't the Blue Silver Emperor, nor was it the Clear Sky Hammer. It didn't recognize Soft Bone either. Was it a butterfly? Even if it had mutated, it shouldn't have mutated to this extent, right? Even its species had mutated? Wang Fengxin said. This martial soul had the aura of a god. It was most likely a god from the god realm who had given its power to little Wudong when she was young. However, even if this radiant butterfly goddess was a god, it was still a beast god. It should have been a soul beast god, right? How is it? Are you scared? Wang Dong looked at Wang Feng with a smug look on his face. A little girl's temperament was undoubtedly revealed. Wang Feng laughed. Part of little Wudong's memories had been sealed. She had lived with the great Ming's heir Ming since she was young, and had even been sent to the Shrek Academy. It was actually not bad. If little Wudong had continued living in the god realm, she would have been even more domineering since she was a god king. Coupled with her exceptional talent and looks, she would probably be even more unruly when she grew up. She would be arrogant and ignorant of worldly affairs. She would also lose a lot of happiness and experiences. It was a good thing to send her to the mortal world to gain experience. Sometimes, people who were too good-looking and talented would lose a lot of their troubles. Wang Feng was an example. End of chapter. Chapter 1093. Come. A smile suddenly appeared on Wang Feng's face. His smile was like the melting of snow, the blooming of spring flowers, and the sprinkling of light onto the world. It was as if all the evil and troubles in the world had been dispelled by this smile. Wang Dong was stunned. He wasn't the only one. Many of the students below were stunned as well. Their faces couldn't help but blush. The smile on his perfect face seemed like it could kill both men and women. So handsome. A beautiful girl below clasped her hands in front of her heart and looked at him with infatuation. Wang Dong hurriedly dispelled the distracting thoughts in his heart and quickly told himself that this youth definitely wasn't the real Wang Feng, the white-clothed popediff. In the next moment, Wang Dong tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and kicked towards the youth in front of him. Wang Feng stood where he was, his smile disappearing. His expression was calm as he looked at the kick filled with soul power coming towards him. He gently stretched out his hand and shook it. An enormous and irresistible force instantly sent Wang Dong flying backwards. That exaggerated strength wasn't something a rank 18 soul master could possess. The scene around him flashed past like an illusion. A rope had unknowingly wrapped around his waist and pulled him back to a stop. He was only a step away from the soul dueling stage. Wang Dong relied on his wings to stabilize himself in midair. The rope was made of leaves. It was unknown how it had been glued together, but it was incomparably sturdy. He saw Wang Feng's figure at the end of the rope. With a gentle tug, countless leaves filled the sky and automatically flew behind him. What a miraculous method of control! It was clear that his opponent had acted in time and hadn't sent him flying. "You're too slow and you're too weak," Wang Feng said. "The radiant butterfly goddess is strong in flying and long-range attacks. It's not good in close combat. At the same time, the illusory beauty of your wings can interfere with your opponent's vision by absorbing sunlight. You didn't use any of these, and rushed forward in close combat without knowing your opponent's martial soul or strength. Little girl, didn't your two guardians teach you basic fighting techniques? As his voice faded away, the crowd immediately started discussing again. Wang Dong hadn't used his martial soul yet, but the strength he displayed with his every move revealed the tip of his mysterious strength. Wang Dong stared blankly at the youth in front of him. The sense of familiarity in his heart grew even stronger. Could it be that he knew about eldest father and second father? You've lost. You may leave. Wang Feng waved his hand. Wang Dong was silent for a few seconds. Although the force from before was enormous, it was relatively gentle and didn't cause him any harm. Clearly, the other party was still controlling his power. It was hard to imagine that it was just an ordinary clap. He had such an exaggerated amount of power and was able to control it so skillfully. I refuse to accept this, Wang Dong said in a low voice. All right, then you can come again. Wang Feng still had some patience. If it were anyone else, Wang Feng would have sent them flying with a slap. In the next moment, Wang Dong learned his lesson and didn't rush forward. Instead, he stood where he was. The patterns on the blue butterfly wings suddenly lit up. It was as if countless rays of light were condensing, preparing for a powerful attack. Second soul skill. Light of the butterfly goddess. Wang Dong let out a loud shout, causing the blue butterfly wings to shine even brighter. In the next moment, just as the butterfly wings on Wang Dong's back were about to release a powerful burst of energy, Hu Yuhao's eyes suddenly lit up. However, Wang Feng's figure disappeared from his line of sight. A gust of wind blew. In the back, a leisurely voice rang out. Before Wang Dong could turn his head, he felt an enormous force coming from behind him. It directly kicked him to the ground. Do you think your enemies are idiots? Using a long-range skill while standing where you are? Wang Feng looked at Wang Dong, who was lying on the ground. Wang Dong struggled to crawl up from the ground. His eyes were slightly red, and his handsome face was covered in dust. This was the first time he had made a fool of himself in front of so many people. Then what can I do? I can only use this soul skill while standing where I am, Wang Dong said angrily to Wang Feng. The students from the One Pole Club had also seen it clearly. Wang Dong couldn't be blamed for this. The other teachers also frowned. Who made this rule? However, Wang Feng said, who made this rule that I can only use this soul skill while standing where I am? So many years have passed. Don't tell me that the soul skills you soul masters use have not changed at all? A few thousand years ago, many soul masters were able to use long-range soul skills while moving. Why can't you do it? This is because of the uniqueness of soul skills. Some soul skills can only be used while standing where they are. A teacher looked at Wang Dong's pitiful appearance and hurriedly spoke up for him. Ridiculous. Wang Feng shook his head. If it's really this kind of soul skill, can't you soul masters change it? After learning about soul skills, you clearly know that they have flaws. Why don't you try to change these flaws? You people from the Shrek Academy are all geniuses. You can't change those high-ranked soul skills, but you can't change these low-ranked soul skills? Wang Feng shook his head. Is it that hard to change soul skills? Or do you all think that you're stupid? After he finished speaking, everyone looked at him in astonishment. Wang Dong was also stunned. His face turned red and white. You're really stupid. However, you can only know if it's possible by experimenting and trying to change it. Little girl, you haven't thought about it even now. Wang Feng sighed. A soul master who doesn't have his own thoughts, no matter how strong his martial soul is or how outstanding his talent is, he's still a nobody. He's just a mediocre soul master. You won't be able to become a true expert if you follow the rules. After hearing these words, Wang Dong was stunned. Her eldest and second uncles had doted on her since she was young. Even if they'd trained her, they'd never said anything like this. Clap, clap, clap. The teacher, Zhou Yi, was the first to applaud. That makes a lot of sense. Student, you can go down first. His strength isn't something that you can resist. Wang Dong silently walked down. It was hard to imagine that the other party hadn't even used his martial soul, and hadn't even released any soul power undulations. Why do I feel that Senior Wang is rather patient with this Wang Dong? Tang Yu whispered, my intuition tells me that Senior Wang has a close relationship with this Wang Dong. Oh right, they're both surnamed Wang. Do you think it's him? Bei Bei shook his head. It shouldn't be him. There are many people with the surname Wang. You're being too suspicious. However, we rarely think about changing soul skills. I remember that the experts of the past all liked to train their soul skills through various kinds of training. Even if they didn't evolve their soul skills, they could still improve the strength of their soul skills, as well as fix some of their fatal flaws. End of chapter. Chapter 1094. It's just that it's too difficult, so very few people will actually try it. Senior Wang's words are very reasonable. We're geniuses. How can geniuses be stopped by such difficulties? Tang Yu also nodded lightly. On the stage, Wang Feng looked at the teachers opposite him. Suddenly, his heart moved and he looked at the crowd below. With his senses, he discovered that there were a few more powerful auras in the crowd. However, the more people that came, the more satisfied he was. Are you planning to personally come? Wang Feng looked at the teachers. No. However, Zhou Yi said with some interest, although you're only at rank 18, your vision is extraordinary, and your battle experience is extremely rich. There should be some students in the outer courtyard who want to challenge you. You don't mind, right? You want to challenge the Shrek Academy. I don't mind. Wang Feng laughed. If anyone else wants to come up, they can give it a try. Although his physical strength had been sealed, his body was still very weak. Even though he had 5 God King seals, not a single one of them had been undone. After he finished speaking, many of the female students below became restless. Soon, a girl walked up. This girl was dainty and cute. She looked to be 13 or 14 years old, and she stared straight at Wang Feng. Big brother, you're so handsome, the dainty girl said with a bashful expression. Hey, please don't use such vulgar words to praise me. Wang Feng sighed. It'll make me very annoyed. The girl. Big brother, you're so interesting. The dainty girl giggled. Although you're very handsome, this is the first time I've seen someone with such a thick skin. However, I'll invite you to listen to a song. A 1,000-year soul ring lit up on the dainty girl's body, and an emerald green song appeared in her hand. This song is very nice. Right, I'm called Xiao Xiao. My martial soul is a flute. Wang Feng looked at the flute in the girl's hand. There were 9 phoenix patterns faintly engraved on it, and it looked extremely extraordinary. You're young, but you can play the flute. Wang Feng glanced at the dainty girl. Xiao Xiao's face turned red again, but she picked up the flute and started playing it. In an instant, the pleasant sound of the flute sounded like a clear spring under the girl's soft and beautiful lips. Unknowingly, many of the students were immersed in the pleasant sound of the flute. The clear and melodious sound of the flute changed abruptly in the middle of the flight, turning into a low and mournful wail. Everyone's mood also turned gloomy. The second half of the song also began to be filled with joy and joy. This continuous change caused everyone's mood to rise and fall along with the flute music. There were even many people who started to cry. Even the teachers with high soul power levels had heavy hearts, their eyes glistening with tears. This flute song was clearly extraordinary. The girl infused her spiritual power into the flute, but there were no soul power fluctuations. This kind of flute music had always been a unique skill. Does it sound good? When the girl let go of Chang Xiao, everyone was stunned for a long time. She blinked and asked, "Does Big Brother sound nice?" "It doesn't sound good." Wang Feng shook his head. The girl looked at Wang Feng in surprise. "Big Brother, you seem to be completely fine. Please remove the word seem. A mere flute song is enough to make your big brother lose his composure?" Wang Feng saw through the little girl's thoughts with a glance. This little girl obviously didn't want to defeat him. She wanted to make him lose his composure. This was another level of defeat. How could it be? Xiao Xiao exclaimed, her face red. "This song, Qingshui, is not an ordinary song. Even if my strength is low and I can't use 1/10 of its power, it is still effective on teachers. Even I was moved. How could it not be effective on you?" "Maybe it's because I'm too handsome?" Wang Feng said. Xiao Xiao said bashfully, "I don't believe it. Big Brother, how did you do it?" "Speaking of playing the flute, I know how to do it too." Wang Feng said, "Little girl, give me your flute? I'll play it too." "Really?" Xiao Xiao was surprised and didn't care that she had already used the flute. She ran in front of Wang Feng and gave him the flute with a red face. "Disperse your flute first and use your soul power to condense it again." "How can you give me a flute that you've used before?" Wang Feng said. "Little girl, are you trying to take advantage of Big Brother?" Xiao Xiao. "No way." Xiao Xiao giggled. "I think you're very fun. Why don't you be my big brother in the future?" Thus, Xiao Xiao dispersed the flute before condensing it back together. "Sure." Wang Feng smiled faintly. "If you can withstand my song, I'll reluctantly be your big brother. If you can't, then I can't." He took Xiao Xiao's newly condensed flute. Wang Feng put it to his mouth. "That's too easy." Xiao Xiao said confidently, "I've heard many flute songs. It's impossible to make Xiao Xiao lose her composure." "Boss, you really know how to play the flute? When did you learn it?" In the soul domain, Long Xie was surprised. "Boss, you know a lot of things." Wang Feng smiled. "But this song isn't a flute song, it's a flute song. There's one song that I have some feelings about now." Then, Wang Feng closed his eyes. The sound of the flute was heard. Instantly, everyone who had just regained their senses from Xiao Zhao's flute was shocked. The sound of the flute was heard, but it was calm and had an ancient feeling to it. It slowly came out from the holes of the flute, as if 10,000 years had passed. As the dusty memories were unlocked, everyone felt as if they had walked for thousands of years. It was like a dream that had lasted for thousands of years. Looking at the changes in the world, the changes in the stars, the changes in the continent, everything in the world seemed unfamiliar. That kind of heaviness that had been experienced for countless years caused everyone's mind to be immersed in it, and they felt as if their souls were in mourning. After a few minutes, the flute song slowly disappeared. "Wah wah wah!" Xiao Xiao cried, opened her eyes and looked at Big Brother in front of her with tears in her eyes. She sobbed and asked, "Big Brother, this song, what's the name of it?" She wasn't the only one. Many people couldn't bear the heavy feeling and started crying. Even the teachers were no exception. Strong spiritual power, coupled with the change of emotions, the influence of the song was on a completely different level. Perhaps no one could play this song better than Wang Feng. "Dream of 1,000 years," Wang Feng said slowly. This was one of the 3 songs that he learned from the sea witch on the sea god's island. Wang Feng, who had comprehended the seal for 10,000 years, had the deepest understanding of this song. Everyone looked on in a daze. They felt that the mysterious young man on the stage was really like this song. He had crossed over thousands of years and walked over from the distant ancient times. He carried an extraordinary magnificence that caused people to be deeply intoxicated by him. At this moment, a woman slowly walked in from outside. She was slightly stunned when she saw this scene. P.S. There are 5 more songs tonight, please count the votes. End of chapter. Chapter 1095. Dream of 1,000 Years. Xiao Xiao mumbled a few words before asking, "Big brother, have you lived for 1,000 years?" The loneliness in the sound of the flute and the ancient atmosphere it exuded could not be expressed if the feelings were poured into one's heart. This had nothing to do with the strength of one's mental power. It was related to one's experience. Xiao Xiao had played the flute for many years and naturally understood this. This song was called A Dream of 1,000 Years. Only those who had truly experienced the hardships of 1,000 years of history would be able to pour out such emotions that flowed into every part of their body like a stream. It was so infectious. However, it was rare for experts nowadays to be able to live for several hundred years. 1,000 years, that was almost impossible. Of course not, Wang Feng replied. Oh, Xiao Xiao nodded. This big brother should not be able to live for that long. She should be overthinking it. I have lived for 10,000 years, Wang Feng said in a hoarse voice. That vicissitude aura immediately stunned Xiao Xiao. 10,000 years? Xiao Xiao looked at Wang Feng in a daze. Then, why is it not called Dream of 1,000 Years? Xiao Xiao muttered. The teachers behind her were speechless. Did this silly girl really believe it? Because Dream of 1,000 Years sounds better, Wang Feng replied. Xiao Xiao. She looked at him blankly. However, in the next moment, Wang Feng laughed. You really believe it? After saying that, Wang Feng knocked the flute on Xiao Xiao's head and inserted it into the bun on her head. Xiao Xiao looked at Wang Feng. Big brother was lying to me? Go down. Wang Feng waved his hand. When I have time, I will teach you 2 more songs. He had learned 2 songs from the Sea Witch. Demonic Soul Suppressing Song and Sea Calming Sacred Song. They were both songs with special effects. Speaking of which, he did not know what the current sea god's island was like. Okay. Little Xiao suddenly smiled happily, and then walked down the stage. Wang Feng shook his head. These children were too young. Their minds were simple and not complicated. One could only judge a book by its cover. If an ugly person said that he wanted to teach you 2 songs, you would probably call him bad uncle without hesitation. Following Xiao Zhao's departure, a few other students came forward one after another. However, Wang Feng easily dealt with them. There was no other way, even if he didn't use his mental power. Stand here and call them. It was also very difficult for these children to cause any substantial harm to him. His physical body strength had been sealed, but the toughness of his body, which was also its defensive power, still existed. Logically speaking, even a soul emperor shouldn't be able to harm him. Only a soul Douluo could do so. Even if they couldn't beat him, there weren't many people in this world who could hurt him. There was almost no one who could kill this incarnation of his. Of course, Wang Feng didn't exclude some experts. Because the world was too great, their battle prowess exceeded his own estimation. But don't play around, esoteric. As of now, Wang Feng could be considered to have cultivated the esoteric character to greater mastery. However, he was still quite a distance away from perfection. But with the esoteric character of the Great Success Realm, the only way to reason with him was to blast him to smithereens. That was the only way to kill him. If he were to produce a spirit core, he would not die even if his head was chopped off. Once his God King seal was undone and his strength returned, he would be able to defeat a titled Douluo with a single punch. Of course, this wasn't very likely, because soul power was linked to the 7 purple origins, and the purple origin patterns were related to the God King seal. One person after another couldn't even last 3 moves against Wang Feng. When he was interested, Wang Feng would give them a few pointers and say a few words. With his rich cultivation, he could see through the flaws of these students, such as their martial soul usage, soul skills, combat techniques, and so on. He was just like Wang Dong from before. However, he was only interested occasionally. After all, not everyone was his little niece. He didn't care too much. Many of the students were rather excited. This was because they had to admit that fighting against this devastatingly handsome guy was a form of enjoyment, even if they were beaten up. They could even receive some pointers, so why not? The teachers at the side were also stunned when they saw this. They even gradually forgot that this youth's soul power was only at rank 18. That's not how you use a sword. If you want to use a sword, you have to first learn the sword. Oh no, you have to first learn the most basic moves of a sword. Your martial soul is the green-edge sword, an orthodox 3-foot-long green edge. First, you have to learn the basic moves, cut, stab, practice each move 3,000 times a day before you consider your fancy soul skills. Brick-type martial soul? This was a peerless martial soul. Kid, work hard to cultivate to rank 70. When you awaken your tool soul true body, no one will be your mat. As the saying goes, with a brick in hand, the world is mine. This isn't a trash martial soul. It can fight, defend, and even build a house. Kid, you have a bright future ahead of you. Oh? Kid? Where's your body soul? Where is it? Hurry up and show it, don't waste my time. What? You're embarrassed? Fine, come over and tell me. Hiss, your body soul is rather strong. It's actually in that part. Wait, all martial souls have their uses. Don't be discouraged. Train your middle finger more. You have to know that even a finger can become a killing weapon. In just half an hour, Wang Feng saw all sorts of strange martial souls. There were even some rare body souls. However, there were only 1 or 2 of them, and they weren't even his spiritual type martial soul. Over the past 10,000 years, a body soul had undergone the greatest mutation after the 5 energy tide. As the concentration of heaven and earth's origin energy increased, a human's body would involuntarily absorb it. This would cause one's body to mutate and awaken a body soul. This was the origin of body souls. However, in this era, body souls were relatively rare. Compared to 10,000 years ago, there were many different types of martial souls. Wang Feng clicked his tongue in wonder as he looked at them. At this moment, an uproar could be heard from below. A girl suddenly walked up. However, Wang Feng was slightly taken aback by this girl. This girl was very pretty. At least, she was one of a kind among these people. The girl looked to be around 15 years old. She had a graceful figure and beautiful golden wavy hair. Her skin was like ice and her bones were like jade. Her eyes were like limpid autumn water, clear and moving. Her beautiful eyes had an elegant temperament. Her facial features were as exquisite as a painting, and her eyebrows were soft and gentle. Wow, it's the outer courtyard's #1 beauty, Jiang Nannan. I didn't expect her to go up too. Seeing this girl go up on stage, many people below became excited for a moment. The outer courtyard's #1 beauty? Wang Feng looked at the girl in front of him in astonishment. She was indeed pretty. However, Wang Feng couldn't recognize her. He only knew about Hui Yuhao from the second book. End of chapter. Chapter 1096. Furthermore, the world had already changed because of him. Judging from this girl's aura, she was probably one of the female characters in the original novel. Wang Feng could also vaguely feel a familiar aura from her. Shrek's Outer Courtyard's 5th-year student, Jiang Nannan. My martial soul is the soft-boned rabbit, rank 32. Please advise me. The girl's voice was gentle, but it gave off an unapproachable feeling. Soft-boned rabbit? Wang Feng was startled. How did Xiao Wu's martial soul appear here? Wasn't this a joke? Wang Feng was speechless as he looked at the girl in front of him. Her aura was completely different from Xiao Wu's. A rank 32 soul elder was considered outstanding among these students. She wasn't even 15 years old, but her talent could only be considered average. If she was rank 42, Wang Feng felt that he could take a look at her. In reality, Xiao Wu was a 100,000-year soft-boned rabbit, which was why she was able to cultivate so quickly. Wait, there's another force in this girl's body, twin martial souls? Wang Feng was incomparably astonished. If that was the case, then this girl's talent wasn't bad. Xiao Xiao also had twin martial souls. Although twin martial souls were still rare after 10,000 years, many soul beasts had undergone many changes due to the changes in the origin energy of heaven and earth. The probability of twin martial souls appearing had greatly increased. Naturally, it wasn't like 10,000 years ago, when there were only a few of them in the entire continent. Below. Ah, silly boy, are you dazed? Can't you walk after seeing a beauty? Wang Dong looked disdainfully at the dazed Huoyuhao. No. Huoyuhao shook his head. I'm just thinking about when teacher plans to reveal his soul-bonded beast. Furthermore, I feel that although this girl is beautiful, she's still inferior to me. But he still can't compare to teacher, so why would I be in a daze? Wang Dong. This stinking brat is actually very reasonable. Wang Dong thought to himself. What's a soul-bonded beast? Wang Dong asked. Didn't teacher say that? He's a soul charmer, not a soul master. Huoyuhao paused. Teacher has his own plans. I'll stop talking. Hearing this, Wang Dong was infuriated. She hated people who only spoke halfway. Bastard! Hurry up and tell me what a soul charmer is. Wang Dong grabbed Huoyuhao's shoulder and said fiercely. He was extremely curious about this Wang Feng. In his eyes, the other party was gradually shrouded in a layer of mystery. Regardless of whether or not he was the Nine Open Grand Ancestor, the other party was indeed capable. I'm not saying. Huoyuhao was like a stubborn bull. Tangya and Bei Bei walked over. When they saw this scene, they immediately said sternly, Hey, hey, hey. You little Shota, how dare you bully our Huoyuhao in public? Wang Dong snorted and let go of Huoyuhao's shoulder. He hadn't used any strength at all. Tangya and Bei Bei both smiled. The two of them had actually heard their conversation. Little Shota, don't be impatient. You'll be able to see it in a while. Tangya glared at Wang Dong. Speaking of which, didn't you dislike him yesterday? Why did his attitude change today? Why are you so curious about Senior Wang? He's right. I admit that he is a man of ability. Naturally, I'm curious. Wang Dong said disapprovingly. His attitude isn't bad. Bibi said, surprised. This young man seemed to be incomparably arrogant, but in his heart, he still had his own yardstick to measure. That's strange. Nanan usually doesn't participate in this kind of thing. She also doesn't like to be in the limelight. Why is she on stage? Tangya asked curiously. Could it be that there's a problem with her cultivation? Teacher can't solve it, so she wants to give it a try. Bei Bei said. That shouldn't be the case, right? Tangya thought for a moment. She was quite familiar with Jiang Nanan. She also knew what kind of person Jiang Nanan was. Although she was extremely beautiful and talented, she was also very hardworking. As long as it wasn't a public exam, she rarely participated in it and avoided it as much as possible. What other reason could there be? Bei Bei asked doubtfully. Could it be that she's also taken a fancy to Senior Wang? It's not that easy for her to fall in love with someone else. Why did you use the word also? Tangya turned around and looked at Bei Bei vigilantly. Bei Bei was speechless. Xiao Ye, what are you doing? Are you suspecting me? You're the only one I like. It's mainly because I saw that many girls were attracted to Senior Wang. That's why I used the word also. Bei Bei broke out in a cold sweat. Why are these girls so sensitive? Humph, I'll consider you a pass. Tangya said, let's watch the competition. On the stage, Jiang Nanan was already charging towards Wang Feng. She was very fast. Among all the students present, she was the fastest that Wang Feng had ever seen. Although the soft bone rabbit was an agility-type martial soul, she had clearly trained hard. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so fast. First soul skill, 1,000-layered lock. Jiang Nanan was extremely fast. She was like a golden gust of wind. In the blink of an eye, she was already close to Wang Feng. Wang Feng didn't dodge. He allowed Jiang Nannan to jump up like a nimble little rabbit. Thousand-layered lock was a special soul skill. After the martial soul possessed the body's strong flexibility would be used to bind the enemy's four limbs like layers of shackles. If this move was used well, it could even distort the enemy's body and achieve the effect of killing them. Even if it wasn't used well, it could still subdue the enemy. When Jiang Nannan's hands grabbed onto Wang Feng's shoulders, her entire body became extremely soft. Her four limbs formed a strange arc, and she suddenly locked her legs onto Wang Feng's thighs. She wanted to bind Wang Feng just like that. However, it was clear that Wang Feng could feel the strong explosive power contained in Jiang Nannan's body, even though he was unmoving. Her four limbs didn't have any softness. They only felt like they were extremely strong, like iron chains. However, it didn't have any effect. Wang Feng's body didn't change at all. No matter how soft Jiang Nannan's body was, she couldn't change Wang Feng's body at all. He was like a pillar that supported the heavens. He stood there without moving. Although they were both soft bone rabbits, Jiang Nannan's soul skill was obviously very different from Xiao Wu's. Strictly speaking, Jiang Nannan's soul skill wasn't as strong as Xiao Wu's. This was because Xiao Wu's body couldn't be compared to Jiang Nannan's. Wang Feng had fought with Xiao Wu and Tang San many times. He was naturally very familiar with Xiao Wu's move. Even though Jiang Nannan's current strength was definitely stronger than Xiao Wu's, she couldn't bind him. Second soul skill, 10,000 kilograms fall. When he heard this soul skill, Wang Feng thought that he had misheard. You're just a little rabbit, and you're playing with 10,000 kilograms fall? You're already pretty good if you can weigh 50 kilograms, okay? However, as Jiang Nannan's second soul ring lit up, the weight of Jiang Nannan, who was trapping him behind, increased. If it were a 30-something soul master of the same rank, even a battle soul master with a beast martial soul would find it hard to bear. End of chapter. Chapter 1097. She'd probably be subconsciously flipped over. The purple soul ring gave Jiang Nannan a huge boost. However, Wang Feng still didn't move. Wang Feng faintly frowned, and a faint fragrance flashed past his nose. Immediately afterwards he heard, third soul skill, twisting silk. In that instant, a special force came from Jiang Nannan's surroundings. It carried a strong twisting force as it entered Wang Feng's body from all over. It was very destructive. This force seemed gentle, but it felt as if thousands of threads had wrapped around one's body, and one couldn't break free. This was a 10,000-year soul skill. Wang Feng even knew that this soul skill had most likely come from a ferocious ape. This kind of soul beast had slender limbs and wasn't large in size. It was good at using its body to wrap around its enemies. Furthermore, it was extremely intelligent and had cultivated this special technique. Jiang Nannan's feet suddenly landed on the ground, and she used this force to wreak havoc in her opponent's body, causing him to lose control of his body. Then, she skillfully used her knee to push against Wang Feng's back, wanting to use this to fling him away. However, at this moment, her body suddenly stiffened. Her face was slightly pale, and she took 2 steps back. However, nothing happened to Wang Feng. He turned around and looked at Jiang Nannan. Everyone was somewhat astonished. What had happened? Could it be that this mysterious youth had used some other method? Wang Feng looked at her, who was a few steps away, and seemed to understand something. Then, he suddenly punched towards Jiang Nannan. This punch was so fast that it didn't even leave behind an afterimage. Jiang Nannan was directly sent flying several meters. Her lower abdomen was hit. Pooh! A mouthful of thick blood was directly spat out from Jiang Nannan's mouth. In a split second, a few exclamations came from below. Nannan! Sister Nannan! They were clearly Jiang Nannan's friends. Jiang Nannan heavily fell to the ground. The faces of the teachers also changed. In the previous matches, they'd stopped when it was appropriate. The other party didn't have any intention of injuring anyone. But now, he had punched this student in the face. Could it be that he'd become angry from the humiliation caused by the other party's continuous use of soul skills? That's not right. Zhou Yi frowned. It should be Jiang Nanan's problem. His punch was somewhat profound. The other teachers were incomparably astonished, and didn't understand what she meant. At this moment, 3 figures directly leapt out from below. You dare to injure her? An incomparably robust youth walked out from the group. He was about the same age as Bei Bei, but he was a little too old to be called a youth. He shouldn't be 18 years old. But his physique was stronger than many youths. There were a few people following behind him. The young man's body slowly flickered as a green tortoise martial soul emerged from his body. The 2 people behind him also, the soul 3 soul exalts over the level of 30, led by the Xuanwu tortoise, charged at Wang Feng furiously. It's Su Sanshi, caged Tang soul Jiang. However, what's going on with Senior Wang? Why would he hurt someone? Sister Tangya, who is this Su Sanshi? Huo Hao asked. He's also a genius student from the outer court. He has the bloodline of a divine beast, the Xuanwu turtle. Tang Soul explained. However, this Xuanwu turtle also has the bloodline of the divine beast, the black tortoise. These bloodlines should have slowly weakened over time, but due to the energy tide, the bloodline began to revert to its ancestral state. This was most obvious in Su Sanshi's generation. That's because his martial soul has already evolved into a true black tortoise. He's even stronger than Bei Bei. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he's the #1 person in the outer courtyard. Huo Hao was enlightened. Is Su Sanshi pursuing Jiang Nanan? Wang Dong asked curiously. Seeing the person he likes vomit blood. That's not it. Tang Soul hesitated. Jiang Nanan is Su Sanshi's younger sister. A year or 2 ago, Su Sanshi was indeed pursuing Jiang Nanan. After his pursuit failed, Su Sanshi recognized her as his younger sister. However, Jiang Nanan didn't acknowledge him. She also ignored him. There's such a thing? Wang Dong was incomparably astonished. Recognized her as his younger sister? Did he fall in love with someone else? Who knows? Nanan's family isn't rich, and there are too many people pursuing her. She doesn't like any of the talented, rich, or powerful students. Tang Soul shrugged. Nanan said that she doesn't want to think about these things. However, if there's fate, she'll treat it seriously. Su Sanshi isn't bad, but she doesn't feel anything for him. No matter how outstanding he is, it's useless. Girls are so strange. Huo Hao muttered. Boys are just as strange. Wang Dong laughed coldly. Huo Hao looked at him blankly. Aren't you a boy? However, seeing the blood that Jiang Nanan vomited, I reckon that there's another reason for this. Sanshi was too rash. Bei Bei continued to ponder. However, Su Sanshi should be taught a lesson this time. That was the truth. On the stage, Su Sanshi charged forward with the 2 of them. The black tortoise possessed his body, and a tortoise shield strangely appeared on his arm. It looked extremely extraordinary. As his body expanded, the muscles all over his body seemed to emit a steel-like luster. It was hard to imagine what kind of defensive power could allow his body to reach such a level. Stop. Jiang Nanan's voice was a little weak on the ground. She couldn't stop Su Sanshi. Wang Feng snorted coldly. He released a mysterious sound from his mouth. It was one of the chaotic 8 notes, the bright word. Over the past 10,000 years, Wang Feng had completed the chaotic 8 notes that he had comprehended. The last few notes were mixed with Wang Feng's understanding of the laws of life's origin. They were extremely powerful. 10,000 years was really too long. Wang Feng had made ample preparations for many things during those 10,000 years. The bright word. It could break all illusions. Under this ancient sound, even a mentally unstable person would calm down instantly. They would enter a state of calmness and emptiness. This syllable itself was not used to kill enemies. It was used to aid one's cultivation. The 8 notes of primal chaos was a unique skill that Wang Feng had comprehended from the Sea Witch's spiritual space. It was a unique skill of the Tao of sound. At the beginning, it was called the chaotic 8 notes because it was cool. It only had 1 note in the beginning. However, over the past 10,000 years, Wang Feng had also gradually perfected it. He had mixed in his understanding of the laws of life. It wasn't surprising that it was called the chaotic 8 note. If he cultivated diligently, the chaotic 8 notes would definitely reach a higher level in the future. Wang Feng predicted that it wouldn't be inferior to the Shrouding Heaven World's 9 secrets technique. From control, attack, support, defense, cultivation, recovery, and so on, the chaotic 8 notes would encompass all aspects. End of chapter. Chapter 1098. It wasn't a good idea to keep learning from others. When he became strong enough, he had to create something that belonged to him. Otherwise, no matter how strong he was, he wouldn't be able to create something that belonged to him. He was more like a puppet built with countless golden fingers. The word Ming rang out. Instantly, the entire soul dueling arena fell into a state of silence. Su Sancher and the other 2 stopped a few meters away from Wang Feng. Their eyes gradually became clear. As they thought, they remained silent for a few seconds before withdrawing their martial souls. Strange. Incomparably strange. At this moment, the minds of everyone present seemed to have sunk into an incomparably silent state. Silence, incomparable silence. From afar, these people seemed to have lost their minds. However, their eyes were extremely clear. What a magical ability! Below, the woman who had just walked in was shocked. A look of disbelief flashed across her eyes. Even she was affected by the mysterious ancient sound that came from his mouth. Her mind became incomparably peaceful. A single syllable from a Class 18 soul cultivator could even affect a soul sage like her. Furthermore, it wasn't a soul skill. There were no soul power undulations. Instead, it was a rather rare spiritual technique. If it was a spiritual skill, she couldn't have failed to detect his martial soul. Now that the prosperity of the continent had passed, it was now a period of stability. Many sects and political families had their own unique skills. It wasn't rare for them to be passed down from ancient times. However, she had never seen such a powerful effect. On the stage, Su Sancher calmed down. His mind became extremely clear. He was extremely shocked. After a long silence, he spoke in a deep voice. "I'm sorry. I was too rash. I shouldn't have attacked without following the rules. But why did you hurt my sister?" "Your sister?" Wang Feng looked at Jiang Nannan in surprise. "Su Sancher, what nonsense are you talking about?" Jiang Nannan recovered some strength and stood up with difficulty. She frowned and said, "When did I agree to be your sister?" There was no disgust or intimacy in her eyes. There was only calmness. "Nannan," Su Sancher hurriedly said, "You, stop talking." Jiang Nannan interrupted him. She looked at Wang Feng and a strange look flashed across her eyes. "Senior, thank you for your help." Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Su Sancher was also stunned. However, he wasn't stupid. He had been too concerned just now. When he saw the thick black bloodstains on the ground, he could vaguely guess what had happened. Wang Feng nodded slightly but didn't say anything. Jiang Nannan did have some problems with her cultivation. However, this problem was very troublesome. She had absorbed the soul ring of the ferocious ape, a special 10,000-year soul beast. However, due to the savage ape's own cultivation, the soul rings of the savage ape were mixed with a powerful strand of inner strength. After a soul master absorbed it, This strand of inner strength would wreak havoc within the Soul Master's body, and could only be suppressed with soul force. But with the passage of time, if this inner strength wasn't expelled, it would cause bruises in the body. If it was light, it would lower one's soul power, and if it was heavy, it would damage one's foundation. What was interesting was that as long as one was a soul emperor, they would be able to deal with it. Jiang Nannan didn't look for her teacher because those experts needed to use their soul power and circulate it into every inch of Jiang Nannan's body. For a girl, it was a very tearful thing. However, Wang Feng thought that there were definitely female soul emperors in the school. Jiang Nannan also didn't look for these female teachers for help. Then there was only one possibility. Jiang Nannan didn't want the teachers to know the secret of her other martial soul? Wang Feng could only think of this possibility. Because as long as a soul emperor circulated their soul power, they would be able to detect Jiang Nannan's second martial soul. This was very interesting. Logically speaking, having twin martial souls wasn't something to be ashamed of. On the contrary, for the current Shrek Academy, this was a very good thing. They would definitely focus on nurturing her. This girl is definitely hiding a lot of secrets? Wang Fengxin was puzzled. Jiang Nannan probably didn't think of it herself. The problem with her body would be solved with a single punch on the stage. With that punch, Wang Feng had scattered the inner strength that had been hidden in her body and the bruises that had formed in her body. It could be considered a very ingenious technique. Because if it was a little heavier, this ball of inner strength would spread into her 5 viscera and 6 bowels, causing great harm to her. If it was a little lighter, it would add to the bruises in her body. Only by using just the right amount of strength could it be done so easily. Even a titled Douluo might not be able to deal with it as easily as Wang Feng. Jiang Nannan still wanted to say something. Wang Feng waved his hand and said, "You can leave." Seeing this, Jiang Nannan looked deeply at Wang Feng before walking off. Su Sancher couldn't help but ask, "What's going on?" "Nothing much. I suffered some bruises a few days ago. Just now, that senior's punch forced out the bruises in my body." Jiang Nannan explained simply. She didn't say anything else. This was more like an explanation to others. It wasn't just an explanation to Su Sancher. This was because she knew that if she didn't explain anything, it would be too suspicious. So that's how it is, Su Sancher came to a realization. He looked at the figure on the stage with some admiration. Just now I felt really strange. My body was filled with anger, but I somehow calmed down. Jiang Nannan's eyes flashed. "Little Yuhao, that should be boss's unique skill. It's an extremely powerful spiritual skill." Only the Sky Dream Ice Worm remained on Hui Yuhao's body as he transmitted his voice to him. "Even with my cultivation and spiritual power, I can't be immune to it." The Sky Dream Ice Worm was truly shocked. Hui Yuhao was immediately astonished. The Sky Dream Ice Worm was a true million-year soul beast, even though his combat strength wasn't very strong. Although his combat strength wasn't very strong, his spiritual power was very strong. Could it be that even the Sky Dream Ice Worm couldn't avoid teacher's spiritual skill? I feel that this skill is beyond my understanding. The Sky Dream Ice Worm shook his head. He could feel it. That was because Wang Feng had mixed his comprehension of laws into the 8 chaotic sound. Therefore, the Sky Dream Ice Worm couldn't avoid it. He felt that this skill was beyond his understanding. At the same time, on the stage, "Teachers, an hour has already passed." Wang Feng looked at them. "Shouldn't it be your turn next? Then come." Zhou Yi's serious face didn't show any contempt. This Wang Feng in front of her, Wang Feng nodded slightly and said, "All right, I won't fight next." In the soul domain, Long Xie was furious. "Boss, do you want me to be beaten up? You're not going to fight? Are you going to let me fight alone? Are you going to let a 1,000-year crag dragon face a soul emperor?" "Boss, I want to protest." "Your protest is invalid. You can beat him." End of chapter. Chapter 1099. Zhou Yi was confused when she heard Wang Feng's words. If you're not going to do anything, what are you going to do? Everyone was curious too. Jiang Nannan, who had just walked down, immediately turned her attention back to the stage. This mysterious young man who was pretending to be the 9 opening ancestor seemed even more mysterious now. At this moment, "You might not have heard my introduction," Wang Feng said slowly. "I'm a soul charger, not a soul master. Come out, Long Xie." As he finished speaking, his purple soul ring shone once again. A ray of yellow light shot out from his soul ring. This ray of light landed on the ground and turned into a soul beast. A true 1,000-year soul beast. A crag dragon. As a 1,000-year soul beast, Long Xie's body was even bigger than Wang Feng's. It was extremely strong. Its skin was like a layer of rock, and it looked like it was wearing a layer of rock armor. Its round belly had undergone a long period of training and evolution, and it was very oppressive now. The metal hair on its head was even brighter, and the canine teeth at the corner of its mouth had turned into a pair of fangs that were half a meter long. They shone with a cold light. It was almost 2 meters tall, and there were 2 small lumps on its back. This gave Long Xie a unique charm. A powerful aura spread out from Long Xie's body in all directions. At that instant, the entire soul dueling area was stunned. Therefore, at this moment, the minds of the onlookers went blank for a moment. Only Tang Ye and Bei Bei looked on with complicated expressions. Elder Wang still had to take this step. The crag dragon in front of them had really become a 1,000-year soul beast. It was hard to imagine that this crag dragon was only a 100-year crag dragon 10 days ago. How long had it been? Was a soul charger so strong? This was against the balance of soul beasts' cultivation, wasn't it? Wasn't it against the rules? Strictly speaking, it was against the rules. Normal soul beasts couldn't improve so quickly. For example, Huiyuhao's silver-patterned silkworm had obtained a trace of the Skydream Iceworm's origin power, but it was only a 100-year soul beast. It was a pity that Long Xie wasn't as strong. This was because that drop of essence blood was too useful. Tang Ye and Bei Bei were astonished by his cultivation speed, which defied common sense. However, at this moment, what shocked everyone even more was, soul beast? What was going on? How could a soul beast suddenly appear in the soul dueling arena? The teachers were also completely dumbfounded. Even the woman who had walked out of the sea god's pavilion to observe the situation was stunned. "I'm a soul renderer." Wang Feng looked around at everyone. "We'll focus on nurturing soul beasts and cultivating ourselves. His name is Long Xie, my first soul-bonded beast. A 1,000-year-old crag dragon." At this moment, the 3 words soul charmer really imprinted in everyone's mind. Soul beasts, how can soul beasts team up with humans to fight? A teacher murmured. Dumbfounded. That was the only thought in their minds. He was so confused that he didn't know how to deal with it. It was as if his concept of cultivation had received a huge blow. Even the soul emperors couldn't come back to their senses for a while. "Why not?" Wang Feng said calmly. "According to the history of the continent, didn't my successor, Wang Feng, have 8 companions in the extreme north? That's because I wanted him to accept my legacy as a soul contractor. Otherwise, there should be no one in the entire continent who doesn't know about the soul contractor profession." When the teachers heard this, they were stunned. Thinking about it, it made sense. Soul charmer. Zhou Yi muttered a few words and forced herself to come back to her senses. She looked at the crag dragon in the distant arena. Unlike ordinary crag dragons, this 1,000-year-old crag dragon's eyes were bright and full of expression, flickering with the light of high intelligence. Its body, which didn't seem very big, was filled with explosive strength. It definitely couldn't be recognized by a 1,000-year-old soul beast. "Human, stop wasting time. If you want to fight, then fight. I still need to go back and rest after this." At this moment, the crag dragon spoke in human language and let out an impatient voice. 1,000-year-old soul beast that spoke in human language? What the F***ck is this? Countless people were dumbfounded as they watched. This is a soul charmer? Below the arena, Wang Dong grabbed Hui Yuhao's shoulder. There was only shock, curiosity, and excitement in his eyes. Hui Yuhao slapped Wang Dong's hand away, but didn't answer. Wang Dong wasn't an exception. Everyone was shocked, curious, and excited. Some of the weaker students were even a little afraid. 1,000-year-old soul beast, how can it speak? This is unbelievable. Zhou Yi was stunned for a moment before she took a deep breath. She felt as if her cultivation was being destroyed and collapsing. This wasn't a good feeling. However, this wasn't enough. Is this what you meant when you said that you won't fight? Zhou Yi looked at Wang Feng. That's right. Don't worry. Wang Feng patted Long Xie's back. The corner of Long Xie's mouth twitched. He was in a period of rapid growth. In addition to his special physique, he needed to be beaten. The older he was, the more he would improve and the stronger he would be. Since this is the case, I won't hold back. Zhou Yi took a deep breath. I don't care what a soul charmer is, but I don't believe that 1,000-year-old soul beast can overturn the heavens. After she finished speaking, Zhou Yi charged towards Long Xie. He definitely couldn't overturn the heavens for the time being. To a soul emperor, 1,000-year-old soul beast was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Not to mention 1,000-year-old soul beast, even a soul emperor could kill an ordinary 10,000-year-old soul beast. Zhou Yi's soul rings lit up as she charged towards Long Xie. Although she didn't have a beast martial soul, she was very fast. Evidently, she had been using various methods to strengthen herself. Fifth soul skill, Dark Steel Cold Moon Slash. Before she could get close to Long Xie, she leapt into the air. The dark steel ferrule in her hand became several times bigger. Following this, her body bent like a full moon. The dark steel ferrule in her hand formed a U-shape under the effect of her soul power. After that, she slashed a bright silver blade light towards Long Xie. It carried an aura that could tear everything apart. Just as it was about to land in Long Xie's mouth, Long Xie opened his mouth. It directly swallowed the bright silver blade light. Zhou Yi was stunned. He's fine? While she was in a daze, Long Xie spat out a sticky yellow ball of light. This sticky liquid solidified when it came into contact with something. Zhou Yi was caught off guard. She was hit by several streaks of sticky liquid, and turned into a rock. Her speed was greatly reduced. Fortunately, Zhou Yi was able to avoid the yellow ball of light. Take my ferocious dragon tail whip! Long Xie shouted and charged at Zhou Yi, who was slowing down. Zhou Yi focused her attention on Long Xie's tail when she heard this. She was a little confused. This stony dragon's tail wasn't very long. However, in the next moment, huge fists landed on Zhou Yi's body like raindrops. Are you using the ferocious dragon tail whip? Why are you using fists again? Are you trying to trick me? Zhou Yi broke out in cold sweat. Isn't this stony dragon a little too intelligent? This doesn't make sense. Stony crazed demon fist. Fists after fists landed on Zhou Yi's body like raindrop. Bang, bang, bang. Her opponent was too fast. Zhou Yi wasn't good at defense. She was careless and took 2 heavy punches. Suddenly, he was sent flying. Her face turned pale. What powerful strength! This Stoneclaw beast is far superior to most soul beasts of its level in every aspect. Unbelievable! Take my dark steel cold moon slash. At this moment, Long Xie opened his mouth and spat out 2 silver moonblades towards Zhou Yi. Zhou Yi's expression changed. This soul beast didn't neutralize her attack. Instead, it was storing it. In the blink of an eye, an ice-cold beam of moonlight came from afar and shattered the 2 dark steel cold moon slashes. Then, a cold voice rang out. Teacher Zhou, you can't beat him. Let me try. Let me see what this soul charmer's ability is. P.S. Cough cough, I'm a little late. End of chapter. Chapter 1100. Long Xie couldn't beat Zhou Yi. However, Zhou Yi knew too little about Long Xie, and couldn't make an accurate judgment. To put it simply, Zhou Yi still believed that the evil dragon was only a 1,000-year soul beast. He only had the concept of a soul contract master and soul contract beast in his mind. He didn't know how powerful Long Xie was. Intelligence. Soul beasts with intelligence and soul beasts without intelligence were on two different levels of fighting strength. Long Xie couldn't compare to Zhou Yi, who was a soul emperor. However, Long Xie had lived for countless years. Even if he spent most of his time cultivating, he still had a lot of fighting experience. He was cunning. When Wang Feng first met him, he was trapped by Long Xie. It wasn't hard to imagine how difficult it was to deal with him. Long Xie liked to show off, but he was strong. Just now, he had found a small opportunity to expand his advantage and prevent himself from being beaten up. At this moment, a cold voice sounded. Zhou Yi knew who it was. The cold moonlight broke through Long Xie's dark steel cold moon slash. There was a slight silence in the air. A moonlight flashed, and a figure appeared on the soul dueling stage. A woman in white clothes appeared on the stage. She looked cold and otherworldly, like a fairy from the Moon Palace. She was different from the previous students. This girl looked like she was in her early 20s. Whether it was her appearance or her body, she was much more mature. She wore a badge on her chest. It was bluish gold, and there were a few layers of ripples on it. Her identity was obvious. She was a student of the Sea God's Pavilion. Shrek was so big, and there were thousands of students. However, there were only 100 disciples in the Sea God's Pavilion. It could be said that they were all true geniuses. This girl was a genius among geniuses. This was because the 7 soul rings that shone from her body were incomparably eye-piercing. 2 were purple, 4 were black, and her last soul ring was black with a tinge of red. Her soul ring was at least 80,000 years old. For a moment, everyone looked at the person in front of them in a daze. Many students from the outer courtyard didn't recognize her. Only a few seniors who were about to join the Sea God's Pavilion knew who she was. Le Xuan, why are you here? Zhou Yi stared at this woman in astonishment. She stood up, and a trace of astonishment flashed through her eyes. The Sea God's Pavilion? The woman nodded slightly. Then, she looked at the man in front of her. Although she had watched him for a while, her heart still skipped a beat when she saw him on the stage. Soul Renderer. What the hell is this? What did it symbolize? A miraculous and powerful 1,000-year soul beast that could even suppress a soul emperor. The most frightening thing was that the other party had yet to truly make a move. From the start until now, this person had not unleashed his martial spirit. That mysterious spiritual ultimate skill shocked her even more. Even though the elders of the Sea God's Pavilion didn't allow her to make a move and were only observing, she still wanted to give it a try. Where did this soul renderer come from? My name is Zhang Leshuan. The woman looked at Wang Feng and said calmly, He's from the Sea God's Pavilion, a rank 72 battle soul sage with the moon martial soul. Please advise me. As soon as he finished speaking, the soul battle area instantly fell silent. Rank 72 soul sage? So young? He looked to be in his early 20s. However, when they heard about the Sea God's Pavilion, everyone came to a realization. So she was a genius from the inner courtyard. She's the eldest senior sister of the Sea God's Pavilion, the strongest person in the inner courtyard. Su Sanshur smacked his lips. I didn't expect such a person to be here. The elders of the Sea God's Pavilion should have noticed this mysterious soul renderer since yesterday. As the strongest person in the outer courtyard, he was about to enter his 6th year. It was only a matter of time before he entered the inner courtyard. He wasn't the only one. Jiang Nanan had also heard of him, but she was relatively unfamiliar with him. As for the new students, they were even more clueless. This Senior Wang, can he beat him? Even though Tangya had heard of him, it was her first time seeing him. This is a soul sage. Senior Wang is only rank 18. Isn't the difference a little too big? It wasn't rare for one to challenge someone of a higher rank. However, no one knew where this was going. Only a small part of Senior Wang's abilities originate from his soul power. Bei said, most of it originates from other places. For example, he's very strong. I suspect that his soul power has been sealed. He might not be a rank 10 soul master. Otherwise, his body wouldn't be so strong. You have to know that even if he consumes those treasures, his soul power will increase as his body becomes stronger. There shouldn't be such a huge difference. Bei, what you said makes sense. Tangya was stunned. She nodded. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to be able to surpass so many ranks. Furthermore, Senior Wang's soul power is rising too quickly. He's only been one rank in the past few days. If his soul power has been sealed, it's normal for him to be unsealed bit by bit as the seal weakens. Bei continued, otherwise, it's too exaggerated. In fact, Bei had even guessed a few things. However, most people were immersed in the battle. They didn't have the mood to think about anything else. However, Bei could only guess half of it. He couldn't have guessed that Wang Feng was using an avatar. It wasn't his soul power that was sealed either. It was pure strength. At this moment, everyone's attention was focused on the two of them. On the stage, Wang Feng smiled faintly as he looked at the otherworldly woman in front of him. Can I enter the Sea God's Pavilion if I defeat you? Zhang Lishuan shook her head and said, if you defeat me, you will indeed have the right to enter the Sea God's Pavilion. However, the Pavilion Master and the Elders will decide whether you can enter. She was the strongest person in the inner courtyard. Her abilities and talents were top-notch. With her cultivation speed, she would become a Soul Douluo in the next few years. She would become a Soul Douluo under the age of 30. Logically speaking, 10,000 years ago, Wang Feng thought about it. Other than Tang San and himself, there wasn't anyone else in the entire continent who could do that. Then what are we waiting for? Long Xie, go! Wang Feng shouted loudly. Long Xie was speechless. Roar! Long Xie roared fiercely. At this moment, a huge dragon's aura was released from his body. It covered more than half of the soul dueling arena. Countless soul cultivators were startled by this roar, and their minds trembled. Zhang Lishuan was very calm. She wasn't affected at all. A full moon appeared behind her. The silver moonlight shone on her body. It made her look like a fairy who had descended from the moon palace into the mortal world. It was Wang Feng's first time seeing a moon as a martial soul. Disregarding everything else, the attractiveness of this martial soul was indeed top-notch. As her 7 soul rings flashed, the full moon rose into the sky. Under the clear moonlight, more than half of Long Xie's dragon's aura was dispelled. Following this, Zhang Lishuan tapped her feet lightly. Her entire body seemed to disappear in this bright moonlight. Her body was covered by this layer of moonlight, and she fused with the full moon in the sky. End of chapter. Chapter 1101. Boss, I can't sense her. She's quite powerful. I might not be able to defeat her. Long Xie's heart skipped a beat. Zhang Lishuan's martial soul was a tool soul, and rank 70 was another milestone. Her body was already very strong, and her moon martial soul didn't seem to have any elements. However, it could be used for both long-range and close combat. The moonlight it gave off could even conceal its aura. From a warrior's point of view, Zhang Lishuan was an agile attacker. She didn't have any shortcomings. However, Wang Feng found it a little weird. From his point of view, the moon was essentially a planet. Zhang Lishuan's martial soul should only be in the shape of a full moon. It wasn't a true moon martial soul. Otherwise, how could she have a planet as her martial soul? How could that be? At this point, Wang Feng suddenly realized something. Could it be that someone's martial spirit was a planet? If it was really a planet, how crazy would that be? Could the Douluo continent be someone else's planet? Could the godly realm be another small world with twin martial souls? Thinking of this, Wang Feng's eyes flashed. He got rid of these thoughts and sent a voice transmission. He transmitted his voice to his 7-0 clock. Long Xie couldn't sense it. However, he could sense it. Long Xie's body was too strong. Although his soul was very strong, his body could only take a portion of it. In other words, Long Xie could only use a small portion of his spiritual power. Only when his body gradually became stronger would he be able to use more and more of them. Otherwise, overusing his mental power would cause irreparable damage to his body. However, Wang Feng's body was very strong. He had copied it from his original body. His spiritual power wasn't limited. With Wang Feng's reminder, Long Xie subconsciously turned his body to the side and exposed his back to the 7-0 clock direction. At the same time, he swung his short tail in the 7-0 clock direction. In that instant, crack! The short tail was very strong. It swung in midair, and it sounded like thunder. A silhouette suddenly appeared. It was Zhang Lishuan. She seemed a little surprised that the 1,000-year stone dragon could still sense her attack. However, she reacted quickly. When the tail swung towards her, a beam of light suddenly gathered in her hand, and she grabbed Long Xie's tail. Long Xie felt a huge suction force from his tail. Following this, he felt as if his entire body was about to be pulled up. Super strength. Don't worry. She wants to throw you out. The moment she throws you out, use the flying rock spiral, just like how I threw you out last time. Then, use her strength to spin back and attack. Wang Feng immediately transmitted his voice. No problem. Long Xie quickly replied. As a spectator, Boss had a clear view of the situation. Although Long Xie had been fighting alone for most of the battles, Long Xie had been fighting alone. However, if Wang Feng were to help him, Long Xie would be able to unleash more than 100% of his strength. Sure enough, he was right. The moonlight in Zhang Lishuan's hand had a strong suction force, and she grabbed Long Xie's tail. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, spun, and threw Long Xie away. It was extremely fast. If it were any other soul beast, they would have been dizzy from the fall. However, Long Xie's body suddenly began to spin in the air. Flying rock spiral. The giant spinning top created gusts of wind. Long Xie's body was already strong enough, so his power was naturally stronger. The top spun half around in the air, and it even borrowed the force from Zhang Lishuan's toss to fly back. A strange look flashed across Zhang Lishuan's eyes. She had been seen through. Fourth soul skill, Moon Dance. Zhang Lishuan's fourth soul skill shone. The full moon in the sky suddenly descended and started to spin rapidly. Streaks of force raged on the soul dueling stage. Every blast of energy that landed on the soul battle stage left a clear dent in it. It was obvious how powerful it was. The full moon seemed to dance in the air as it spun. At the same time, it crashed into Long Xie, who was spinning like a top. Boom! In that instant, it was as if two high-speed gears had collided with each other and were stuck for a moment. Long Xie's body was revealed, and he was sent flying by this tremendous force. The tough rock armor on his body was instantly torn apart. His skin was also torn open. Roar! Long Xie let out a pained roar. On the other side, the full moon didn't change at all. It was still shining brightly. Master Long is angry. Long Xie's eyes were filled with ferocity. He didn't care about his injuries as he opened his mouth and spat out a dirt-yellow light wave. This was Long Xie's third soul skill, Crag Dragon Soul Devouring Wave. Apart from being able to devour his enemy's energy attacks, he could also release a dirt-yellow light wave to attack his enemy. Fifth soul skill, Dawning Moon Cold Light. Zhang Lishuan said plainly. Her fifth soul ring shone. In the blink of an eye, the full moon emitted an intense light. The entire soul dueling arena was blinded by the light. Amidst the bright light, a frightening silver beam shot towards the full moon. It clashed with the dirt-yellow light wave that Long Xie had spat out. Their energies were neutralized as they clashed. However, the silver beam broke through Long Xie's soul skill after a few seconds. It hit Long Xie directly. The huge difference in their abilities caused Long Xie to be beaten up again. "Boss, I can't beat her. I want to return to the soul domain," Long Xie said. "Aren't you too scared? Hang in there a little longer. Your injuries are nothing. You haven't even unleashed your potential yet," Wang Feng reminded him. However, Zhang Lishuan was indeed very strong. It was normal for Long Xie, who was only 1,000 years old, to lose. "Boss, you should attack too." Long Xie landed on the soul dueling arena from midair. He seemed to be drunk as he stumbled two-step. Zhang Lishuan watched quietly. 1,000-year stony dragon with an ordinary bloodline was able to withstand 2 of her powerful attacks and still remain standing. It was very rare. Everyone calmed down when they saw this scene. It would be too embarrassing if this eldest senior sister of the inner courtyard couldn't even deal with a stony dragon. "I was too careless just now." Zhou Yi sighed and said, "This stony dragon shouldn't be able to beat me, but its intelligence is unparalleled. It's obvious that it's being suppressed by Lishuan. Lishuan used her strength to suppress it, and she didn't reason with it. If I hadn't been hit by that attack, I would have lost to this soul beast. Furthermore, it's obvious that Wang Feng can help the stony dragon. When Lishuan first attacked, he saw through her attack. The stony dragon was able to dodge in time. That's why Lishuan understood that she couldn't give it any chance. Even if she fought it head-on, the stony dragon would still lose. That's because if she fought it head-on, her opponent wouldn't have any chance to dodge. It's useless even if he saw through it." Unless what?" another teacher asked. "Unless he attacks too." Zhou Yi looked at Wang Feng. End of chapter. Chapter 1102. The teachers were momentarily stunned. Only then did they realize that Wang Feng hadn't done anything since he attacked the crag dragon. At this moment, Zhang Lishuan's gaze landed on Wang Feng. She lifted her head slightly and asked, "Is this a soul contractor?" "Of course not." Wang Feng smiled and said, "A soul contractor is only called a soul contractor when a soul-contracted beast fights alongside a human." "Then why didn't you do anything just now?" Zhang Lishuan asked. "It needs to be beaten up a few times in battle to develop its potential. It can also stabilize its soul power." Wang Feng said, "The more it's beaten up, the more experience it will accumulate, and the faster its cultivation will be." Zhang Lishuan was speechless. She was a little depressed. Zhang Lishuan glanced at Wang Feng. Her eyes shone with a faint silver light. "Long Xie!" Wang Feng shouted, and an ancient voice could be heard. Long Xie shook his head violently, and his eyes became clear. Long Xie's consciousness was jolted awake when he heard the word Ming. Zhang Lishuan's 2 moves had severely injured his body. However, as long as he persevered, he would be able to improve. Zhang Lishuan focused her gaze. It was that ancient voice again. It helped the soul beast that was supposed to be defeated, and stimulated his will. She knew that this soul contractor's true abilities would be revealed in the upcoming battle. In the next moment, Wang Feng's eyes shone brightly. Black and gold intertwined to form 2 ancient beams of light that shot out from the chaos. 14 pairs of black and gold light wings appeared behind Wang Feng's back. An ancient and majestic aura rose from Wang Feng's body. Streaks of flowing light surrounded Wang Feng, making him look like a heavenly god. Wang Feng's body grew slightly taller, from 1.8 meters to 2 meters. His tall and perfect body brought about unparalleled pressure, suffocation. In that instant, after being possessed by the Angel of Light and Dark, Wang Feng's charisma increased by another level. He looked like a god, and his eyes were divided into two colors. His hair was as black as ink, and his chaotic and ancient aura made him seem mysterious. He was extremely handsome. Not only was he handsome, but his aura was also extremely imposing. It was as if he wasn't a human, but a true god. Even though it was their second time seeing him, Tangya and Bei Bei were deeply shocked. They were even more shocked than when they saw Wang Dong's radiant butterfly goddess. Angel Martial Soul. The mysterious Angel Martial Soul. He's too handsome. Xiao Xiao watched excitedly from below. His eyes were filled with the pursuit and desire for beauty. The killing power of this level of beauty and appearance was simply too great. Even Zhang Lishuan's heartbeat quickened for a few seconds, let alone these underage students. It wasn't because of the other party's appearance. Instead, it was his aura. The aura emitted by his opponent's martial soul was too shocking. What kind of martial soul is this? Angel martial spirit? Even the angel martial spirit is not like this. When the teachers behind Zhou Yi saw this, they couldn't help but become somewhat lost in thought. As a teacher, he had a deep understanding of martial souls. Angel martial spirits were rare, but they had appeared before. In the past few thousand years, a few angel martial spirits had appeared. However, none of them could compare to the angel martial soul in front of him. That kind of aura, not to mention the angel martial spirit. Among all the martial souls they had seen, none of them could compare to this one. What a handsome martial soul! Wang Dong muttered. He had originally thought that his radiant butterfly goddess was the most beautiful martial soul on the continent. However, Wang Feng's martial soul was beyond his imagination. It wasn't just his charm. Just his aura alone had already surpassed that of a top-tier beast soul. Such a martial soul seemed to have broken away from the mark of a beast soul. At this moment, go! Wang Feng's thoughts moved and he stared at Long Xie. Following this, everyone witnessed what a soul contract master was. When Wang Feng's martial soul was possessed, a radiant look flashed across Zhang Lishuan's eyes. Her seventh soul ring lit up. Evidently, she didn't want to give Wang Feng any chance. In other words, she had already predicted that Wang Feng would make a move. Her fight with Long Xie was just a warm-up. She didn't believe that a rank 18 soul master could defeat her. The reason was very simple. The difference in soul power was too great. No matter how they competed, there was no other outcome with such a huge difference in soul power. Her seventh soul ring represented her martial soul true body. Under the effects of her martial soul true body, her opponent couldn't resist at all. Zhang Lishuan directly used such a powerful move. She didn't want to give her opponent any chance. In that instant, Zhang Lishuan disappeared, and the full moon suddenly became bigger. Blinding moonlight filled the entire soul dueling arena. It was as if the soul dueling arena had become a domain of moonlight. Nothing could hide from it. Faintly, one could see a tiny figure in the full moon. She was like a fairy from the Moon Palace. Interesting. Wang Feng was astonished as he looked at her martial soul true body. This martial soul possession didn't seem like she had turned into a full moon. It seemed like she had entered her martial soul. Could it be that this martial soul also possesses the rare spatial attribute? Wang Feng couldn't help but think. Space-type martial souls were as rare as Hui Yuhao's spiritual-type spirit eyes. Wang Feng didn't hesitate. The 14 wings behind his back flapped slightly. His entire body was like a streak of black and gold flowing light as he attacked the huge moon. This moon rose into the sky above the soul dueling arena. It was like a full moon in the sky. It exuded a cold moonlight. It was beautiful and holy. Roar! Long Xie leapt into the air. His huge body turned into a spinning top in the air. As he spun at high speed, strong winds started to blow. Before Wang Feng could reach the moon, Long Xie landed in front of Wang Feng. Wang Feng's kick landed on Long Xie's body like a whip. Boom! Huge air currents started to surge. In the next moment, Long Xie's spinning speed doubled. He became even more powerful. Strong winds started to blow. Long Xie's first soul skill, Flying Rock Spiral, was strengthened by external force. Of course, this would hurt Wang Feng to a certain extent. However, it was negligible. When Wang Feng's kick landed on Long Xie's body, Long Xie would put away his stone blades. This was a change in soul skills. Wang Feng had been thinking about soul charters during his training over the past few days. He wanted to bring them to greater heights. He wanted to understand how humans and soul beasts work together in battle. This strengthened both parties' soul skills. This was the true meaning of being a soul charter. With Wang Feng's kick, the tip of the spinning top pierced towards the full moon. Long Xie was spinning at high speed with his two dragon fangs at the tip. He was spinning with his head facing down. This was why the tip was the strongest. It was very difficult for any tool to block it. Even Full Moon, who had transformed into his martial soul true body, would be severely injured if he was hit. End of chapter. Chapter 1103. However, at this moment. 6th Soul Skill, Waning Waxing Moons. A black soul ring flashed above the huge moon. Following this, everyone saw the huge moon turn from a full moon to a crescent moon, as if it was experiencing a lunar eclipse. Finally, it became a waning moon. There was only a slight curvature. This weird change made Wang Feng furrow his brow. This soul skill. Is it changing its shape? In the next moment, Long Xie's attack was aimed at the center of the full moon. However, as the full moon turned into a waning moon, it lost its target. At the same time, whoosh! As Long Xie pierced through the waning moon suddenly closed. It was like a pair of pliers that fixed the spinning gears in place. It broke Long Xie's flying rock spiral. What a weird move! Wang Feng immediately dashed forward. When Long Xie was thrown down, he grabbed Long Xie's tail. Waning waxing moons referred to the full moon of his martial soul true body. He could use his martial soul true body's mentality to defend, attack, or even dodge an enemy's attack. From a full moon to a waning moon, and from a waning moon to a full moon. His enemy couldn't guard against it. It was an interesting soul skill. Wang Feng squinted his eyes. This soul skill wasn't as simple as he thought it would be. Just as Wang Feng expected, the moon shone in midair in the next moment. Then, it turned into a waning moon. It was like a scythe, and it exuded a terrifying light. Waning moon dimensional slash. Silver light tore through the void. It was so quick that no one could react to it. It seemed to have broken through the restraints of space. This powerful single-target attack contained spatial elements. It was impossible to defend against it. If Wang Feng threw Long Xie down, he could still dodge it. However, he didn't want to do so. The 10-meter-long crescent arc sealed the space and fell on Wang Feng's body. Wang Feng's eyes flashed. His soul power surged, and 7 light projections that were 2 meters long enveloped him and Long Xie. Black and gold intertwined. They seemed to form a barrier at this moment. When the silver waning moon landed on it, waves of intense energy undulations were unleashed. Several figures of light disappeared in an instant. Although the figures of light formed from soul power possessed a certain degree of defensive ability, the difference in soul power between them and Wang Feng was too great. They couldn't resist it. Wang Feng's expression changed slightly. Zhang Lishuan's strength had exceeded his expectations. However, it did not matter. Wang Feng did not intend to block it directly. He only wanted to block a portion of its power. In this moment of crisis, Wang Feng lifted Long Xie and held him like a pillar. "Open your mouth and swallow this attack." Long Xie opened his mouth subconsciously. The huge dragon's mouth contained a ball of earthy yellow light as it swallowed the crescent into its stomach. I've calculated that after the enemy's crescent arc passes through the defense of my 14 pairs of light shadows, its power will be greatly reduced. You'll be able to devour it just right, Wang Feng said. Zhang Lishuan didn't go for the kill, so she was holding back. He just wanted to make the other party lose the ability to fight. I'll attack and you support me. Try your best to lock down her position, Wang Feng whispered. Long Xie nodded but didn't say anything. He was currently devouring the crescent arc in his mouth. Following this, Wang Feng attacked Zhang Lishuan's martial soul true body. At the same time, Long Xie spat out the crescent moon from his mouth. At the same time, the yellow light shot towards Zhang Lishuan again. However, under the waxing moon and waning moon, he could change his form and dodge the attacks even if they were just inches away from Zhang Lishuan. In his martial soul true body state, this soul skill was extremely powerful. At the same time, he sensed Wang Feng's attack. While dodging Long Xie's attacks, the full moon shone brightly. Soul skill, Moonfall Stars. 3 soul rings lit up on full moon's body. Evidently, this was a rare soul skill combo. The full moon rose into the sky, and in an instant, countless spots of light appeared in the sky. Densely packed. Whoosh, whoosh. Under the vibrations of the full moon, these light spots tore through space and smashed towards Wang Feng as if they were exposed. As the specks of light fell, they continued to grow in size, just like a falling star. This kind of enlargement was impossible to guard against. Moreover, its speed wasn't any slower than the previous move. Zhang Lishuan's attack was frighteningly fast, as her moon martial soul contained spatial elements. In addition, her soul skill combo covered a large area, and it was an indiscriminate attack. Emptiness. Wang Feng's eyes flashed, and he unleashed his spiritual power. The silver light spots that contained terrifying power seemed to be 10 times larger in his eyes. Long Xie, look at my feet. Open your mouth. Look. Wang Feng moved. At this moment, he seemed to have turned into a streak of light. Wang Feng channeled his soul power to his feet and palms. In his emptiness state, his speed and reaction were extremely fast. These star-like light spots brushed past Wang Feng's body. He could even see the explosive energy contained within these light spots. Wang Feng tapped his finger lightly. As his palm contained soul power, he was able to touch these light spots. These light spots were flicked away by Wang Feng. They accurately landed in Long Xie's mouth. Following this, as Wang Feng dodged, he sent these light spots into Long Xie's mouth. As he was in his emptiness state, he was extremely fast, and everything around him seemed to be still. It seemed like a long time, but only a second had passed. In the eyes of others, they could only see a stream of light shuttling through the falling stars in the blink of an eye. Following this, countless light spots accurately landed in Long Xie's mouth. It was a shocking scene. When Long Xie couldn't take it anymore, Wang Feng suddenly used his soul power to explode the remaining light spots in midair. Boom, boom, boom. At the first moment, the entire sky exploded with bursts of light mist. It blocked everyone's vision. The full moon stood quietly in midair, and a streak of light flashed across it from time to time. Silence. After the explosion, it was extremely quiet. In the next moment, whoosh, a figure leapt out from the light fog and punched towards the full moon. The figure in the full moon seemed to be a little surprised. How did the other party dodge so many explosions? However, when she sensed Wang Feng's injuries, she knew that he was injured too. He had forced his way through. He was at the end of his rope. For her, she could still maintain her martial soul true body for a long time. Under the waxing and waning moon, Wang Feng's punch missed. The full moon could turn into a waning moon from any angle, and it could even turn into an arc. In this state, she was able to dodge most of the attacks in time. Wang Feng's punch carried a strong gust of wind, but it still didn't hit its target. However, Wang Feng's lips curled into a smile. End of chapter. Chapter 1104. Boom. In the next moment, an intense streak of silver light appeared behind Wang Feng. It landed on the crescent moon. It was the attack that Long Xie had been preparing after devouring the moonfall star. From the moment Wang Feng appeared, it shot towards the sky. Wang Feng's attack was just a feint. Long Xie's attack was the real attack. Although you can dodge many attacks with waxing moons, there's a flaw. When your martial soul true body changes its form, its defensive strength will decrease. Wang Feng squinted. He had to take this attack head-on. Furthermore, the strength of this attack wasn't Long Xie's own strength. It was Zhang Lishuan's soul skill. After Long Xie devoured the specks of light, he fused them together and unleashed an explosion that was stronger than a single speck of light. It directly hit Zhang Lishuan's martial soul true body. In that instant, Zhang Lishuan's martial soul true body disappeared. Zhang Lishuan fell to the ground from midair. There was blood at the corner of her mouth. Her face was as white as snow. The red at the corner of her mouth was a little shocking. Silence. It was very quiet. Everyone was stunned as they watched this scene. They didn't know what to say. Did she lose? Or did she win? At this moment, they were all waiting for the result. This was because the battle that followed was very cool and shocking. However, not many people understood what was going on. They could only see Zhang Lishuan being hit. Only a few teachers understood the details of the battle. Zhang Lishuan looked at Wang Feng with a pale face. She said calmly, "I lost." Before she could finish, Wang Feng waved his hand and interrupted her. "Let's call it a draw. Strictly speaking, you didn't use your full strength." After hearing this, Zhang Lishuan watched silently. However, she didn't reply. There was only deep shock in her eyes. She clearly knew that she had lost just now. Furthermore, she had lost because of the cooperation between her opponent and his soul beast. Their tacit and smooth cooperation, as well as their meticulous battle tactics, as well as the mysterious movement technique that she didn't know how to dodge her attack. In the end, he still used his soul skill to defeat her. She had been very vigilant from the beginning to the end. However, she was still defeated by her opponent's cooperation with his soul beast. If her opponent was at rank 70, his soul beast would have had 10,000 years of cultivation. She didn't even have a chance of winning. She would have been crushed. That kind of huge gap would be like a natural moat. The most frightening thing was that he was able to see through the weakness of her waning waxing moons in such a short period of time. That's right, it was defense. This was a special battle state. It had extremely high dodging ability, and at the same time, it also had a powerful attack. It had a decent amplification effect. It could only be unleashed perfectly in his martial soul true body form. The only drawback was that the defensive power of his martial soul true body would be greatly reduced if he changed his martial soul true body's form, such as a crescent moon. Once struck, even a rank 40 soul master would be able to injure him. However, in this state, even a rank 70 soul master wouldn't be able to hurt her, let alone a rank 40 soul master. Therefore, this weakness wasn't considered a weakness when facing soul masters of a lower rank than her. But now, he was hurt. This soul skill of yours should have absorbed the soul ring of the illusory demon, right? Wang Feng looked at Zhang Lishuan and said, "The illusory demon is a rare soul beast that can change its form. After absorbing the soul ring of such a soul beast, your martial soul gained part of its abilities. You can easily change the form of your martial soul. The waning moon, waxing moons. The name of your soul skill is very suitable." Wang Feng thought for a moment and said, "You probably didn't absorb the soul ring of the illusory demon correctly. Otherwise, your defensive power wouldn't have been reduced after you changed your form. This should be a perfect soul skill. When you absorbed the soul ring of the illusory demon, did it come?" His voice was very soft towards the end. It was so soft that it couldn't be heard. Only Zhang Lishuan could hear it. When a girl absorbs the soul ring of an illusory demon, her mind will be in chaos. After forcefully absorbing it, there will be a flaw in her soul skill. Wang Feng shook his head. Zhang Lishuan opened her mouth slightly and looked at Wang Feng. Her face was still a little red. However, her eyes were filled with astonishment. This was because he was right. How could he analyze so much with just one soul skill? He was even able to analyze the situation when she absorbed the soul ring to the best of his abilities. If it were the soul rings of other soul beasts, it wouldn't be enough. However, the illusory demon is very special. You probably only knew about it after it happened. However, it was already too late. Wang Feng pondered. With his understanding of soul beasts and the ancient soul beast Long Xie, although 10,000 years had passed, there were still many different types of soul beasts. There might be many mutations and new species, such as the evil soul beast. However, Wang Feng still knew the majority of it clearly. This was especially so for some rare soul beasts. Similar to the mirror image beast that Oscar absorbed, the illusory demon was also a very special and magical soul beast. There were probably only a few of them in the entire continent. This was why very few people knew about the illusory demon. This information was given to him by Long Xie 10,000 years ago. Zhang Lishuan opened her mouth and wanted to say something. However, she stopped herself in the end. You want to ask if there's a solution? Wang Feng smiled. If this was in the past, there might not be a solution. Soul skills were fixed. Such a flaw couldn't be changed normally. This was mainly because the soul ring of the illusory demon had to be absorbed in the blazing sun sky. This was because the illusory demon contained a special type of illusory demon qi. When a woman was on her period, the yin energy in her body was extremely heavy. After absorbing the illusory demon qi in her soul ring, the yin energy in her body was extremely heavy. After absorbing the illusory demon qi, the soul master's soul skill would be flawed. This illusory demon qi would be stored in the soul ring and wouldn't dissipate easily. It wouldn't affect the soul master's cultivation, but would only create flaws. It was irreversible, and there was no way to solve it. If his original body was around, it would be very easy. He could use the white lotus to purify it or the golden lotus to recover it. If not, there was no solution. Otherwise, with the strength of the Shrek Academy and the elders of the Sea God's Pavilion, how could they solve it? Zhang Lishuan nodded slightly, but sighed in her heart. It was as if the other party was omniscient. He was able to see through her flaws in just a single battle. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was an expert. However, if this was in the past, I might not have a solution. However, I do have a solution now. Wang Feng smiled as he spoke. Boss, what solution do you have? The illusory demon qi can't be absorbed. Once it's absorbed, something will happen to her sixth soul ring. When that happens, we won't be able to find out the flaws. Long Xie was astonished. Your heaven-defying martial soul isn't around. What other solution do you have? Make a guess, Wang Feng said. Long Xie was speechless. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.